Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I'm Aaron Loomis coming to you from the Drew Estate Studio. And with me today is John McTavish from the Powstanie Studio. How you doing, John?
We're back, baby. I don't know if I've caught up on my sleep cycles yet. Vegas does that to you. I think I'm operating about 80%. So if I transpose words tonight and it doesn't make any sense, just roll with it. Just roll with it. It's fine. It's just a little Vegas hangover.
There you go. All right, so we got a special show tonight. We are doing our annual PCA recap show. This one's going to be a little bit different than normal because I didn't actually get to attend the trade show. So I'm really going to be living vicariously through these guys and their recounts from the actual event. So that'll be interesting from my side. But let's welcome all of our guests. First, I'll start with the guy that's in the studio with John tonight. That's Mike from Cigar Hustler. Nice to have you on the show, Mike.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Not in the studio in Canada, but in Texas is Jay Davis from Blue Smoke of Dallas. How you doing, Jay?
Howdy, y'all.
And
Howdy.
then from somewhere on the East Coast, William Cooper from Cigar-Coop. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Aaron. Hey, everybody.
So
Yeah,
I'm assuming you've all had a chance to decompress from Vegas and a good amount of time to catch your breath.
Yeah, I think my daily caloric intake has gone down by about 70%. So it's probably a healthy lifestyle shift, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
We did
Good.
some carnage. We did some eating carnage out there for
This
sure.
Did you?
is some serious damage.
Yeah, we definitely did. This was a definite one of the better eating trips we had. Yeah.
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 All right. So I think we're just gonna hop into the show tonight. So it's gonna be a similar format to what we've done in the past, kind of recounting the show, kind of in like chronological order from like the beginning of things to and then going through the different events to kind of stay on track. So the way I like to start it off is getting an understanding of what your guys' kind of outlook going into the show, like what you thought was going to happen before you actually got there. So a lot of changes this year compared to last year, but want to kind of get a sense of, kind of heading in what you guys were expecting. And I'm actually going to start with Jay on this to kind of give the retail side of things going into the show. Jake, what was your thoughts of how you thought the show was going to go before you got there with the date change, a bit of a venue change, less than half a day, all that kind of stuff. What was your thought going into it?
I think that I was concerned that people were not going to have a lot of money to spend and that manufacturers were not going to have a lot of products ready to ship, both of which proved dead wrong. I thought I would be able to locate the Spirits Pavilion or the mini golf. I found one of them on the fourth day. And I didn't think that, I thought foot traffic would be decent, but I think other than the beginning of the third day, it was higher than expected.
Okay. All right, Mike, what was your thoughts going in? So you're kind of doing double duty again. You got kind of doing a little bit of exhibiting, a little bit of retailing. So what was your thought going into it?
My thoughts about PCA at this point are you never go in expecting anything because there are times where I go in super psyched and I'm, underwhelmed. And there are times when I'm, not prepared and I'm overwhelmed. So, my mentality is always expect the unexpected. And I feel like this year delivered. There's always things that go on. There's media that can't get in that should get in, which I thought was fun. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
The brands did have a lot of guys did have products. That didn't surprise me. And the retailer number from what I could see and from the data that PCA released, it seemed well. It seemed good. It seemed up. So, in general, I think it went pretty good, man. Solid.
All right, Coop, how about you? What was your expectation before getting into the show?
Well, I think we were looking at some of the changes that were happening this year with the trade show, time of the year, the elimination of the half day, and the convention center. And how would the show respond in terms of, would there be more people as expected? Would this go smoothly? Would there be a lot of complaining that's at the convention center? So I was kind of measuring that. I mean, we already had the goal that we were going to cover, even with a bigger team, we knew we were going to cover less booths this year, just because you just can't make up losing the last half day. So that was less of a concern. I wasn't concerned that we were going to have less. In that case, I was looking at more how these other things would affect the week.
All right, John, how about you? What were your thoughts on your way in, kind of heading into the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest concern going to the show was certainly the loss of the half day because it's not my first rodeo. So I knew that more than ever, the expectation was going to be kind of hitting as many booths as possible, just being as efficient as possible every day of the show. I expect the traffic to be up. I don't know if that necessarily because of the date change, but I think a combination of the date change plus the big three being back, my expectation was traffic is going to be up. Going into it, my expectation was we probably wouldn't see a lot of product on display. We'd see kind of some companies with product on display, but a lot of companies not displaying new product. And we'll talk about that later, obviously. I wasn't worried about the convention center. We've been there before, even with sort of the PCA being at the convention center before. It was fine. I have no issue with the convention center. I know some people don't like it, but I think it's a fine convention center. It works fine. And we were located very efficiently to where it was, so that was nice. And I think was the last thing. Oh, and then I was expecting a lot of whinging about the temperature because, and I look, I know I'm Canadian and I'm built of stern stuff, but listen, when you're in Miami and the coldest it gets is 60 degrees before the sky starts falling, I was expecting, legitimately a lot of people to be like, hey man, like it's friggin' cold when it's, we're used to 110, which is unbearable. And now it's like 52 degrees at night and we're freezing to death. So that was that was my expectation going into the show.
All right, perfect. All right, so now we kind of walk our way into like the show is kind of officially getting started there, and we have Steve joining us. Steve, welcome to the show.
Sorry, guys.
No worries at all.
Totally my fault.
That's okay.
I forgot.
That's all right. It happens.
It happens. All good.
We have one rule in this house, and actually we have two rules. But rule number one is don't be sorry, be better. Okay.
Oh, well,
Sorry,
thank you for that, Dab. Appreciate it. No cookies.
So Steve, we were just kind of going through what people's thoughts or expectations were leading up to the show, before the actual show occurs, kind of what you thought might occur from the date
Simple.
changes.
I thought it would suck.
Okay. That was
I
your
thought
expectation.
the shift in the schedule was going to be really tough. I knew it was going to be hard on my end because I'm running like a bat out of hell to make it 1 year to 1 year. So the 4 extra less months was a problem. I thought that, moving it into the March is really tough because look, retailers can't buy what they don't have money to buy. That makes it really hard. And, for so many of us, a little less me than probably some others, because we don't tend to do big deals and discounts at the trade show. Well, we don't. So, but I know that it can put a lot of pressure, and you have a time of year where most retailers aren't really, they're not cash ready yet. I mean, for a lot of places around the country, their season's really beginning next month. So that puts them at a deficit. And look, I don't know about you, but I don't have any idea where the economy is, man. It's just inflation's tough and things are hard. And everybody's, everyone's having a little harder time after the last 3 years. We had the COVID bump where everyone was a little flush. And I think very few retailers can claim they were up last year. And I think probably even same thing with most manufacturers. It was a down year for most, or a hold even year. So, I mean, I didn't really have high expectations going into the show. And on a personal level, I knew that I was coming to the show with less than what I normally come to the show with. So that made me a little apprehensive. So yeah, I thought it would suck.
Okay. That's fair. All right. So getting to the seminars, kind of opening meeting day, did anybody attend the seminars?
Yes.
All right. John, Coop.
Yep.
Jay. All right.
I
No,
popped
for
my
you,
head
right?
in briefly for the
Okay.
funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, but I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So correct me if I'm wrong, if I have the schedule, if they change things up, but hand rolled was going to kick things off.
Yes.
Is that
Hand
how it
roll
works?
kicked. Yeah, hand roll kicked it off.
Okay. And content was
It was
Ec-
Tatuai, Pete Johnson, and they only showed the first hour.
okay.
The rough cut of the first hour. They had so much that they're actually going to make this into a 2-hour
Got it. So
cut.
it was not a finished product.
It wasn't, but
assuming.
there was not a person who left that room. I mean, it was real. I thought it was probably the best one they've done to date. They've seen,
Okay.
they've done a few of these now, but this one, they just really seem to push all the right buttons with this one.
Yeah, I would agree with Coop's take. I think, the first movie that came out, I think they were kind of trying to paint the broad strokes, and you're trying to tell a very long story of a very long history of tobacco with a lot of people, and that's very difficult. That's like telling the story of World War II. You're going to be there for 17 hours.
Yeah.
So I think with the Pete story, they had the ability to focus on his story, and I think first of all, it's a lot more personal, which is always good, and they kind of walked through some of the history, and then they sort of tied it into the greater industry as a whole, which I thought was really well done. It was interesting. It was engaging. It was well produced. And to be blunt, I came out of it going, "Where's the second part? Like, I want to see the second part."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Same thing I felt too.
Okay.
I mean, there was a couple of moments where you laughed pretty hard. When Pete told his parents about getting a tattoo.
Mhm.
And there was a part where you
Pete-
kind of cried a bit. There was a couple parts where you're probably going to cry a bit. The stuff with Pepin and all that was kind of interesting.
I think Pete's mom might have quietly stole the show at several points.
Several points, yeah.
Also, Pete looking like what did they say? One of the members, or trying out for one of the members of the Lost Boys, was very on point. That certainly elicited quite a lot of laughter.
Yeah, it was a lot of the early. So this was more about early Pete Johnson. Really up until when he met Pepin, this all covered. So we really didn't cover the Tatuai piece. It was really about Pete. Then they threw some CA stuff in there and George Brightman, which I guess they had to do. But it was still fine.
Yeah. Okay. And then after that was the La Aurora cigar pairing.
Yeah.
Okay, and what did that consist of?
Listen, anytime you hand out rum and cigars to a group of cigar smokers, I don't see how you're going to have a bad experience. I think, I think it was done well. I think it was the way that it was lined up. I think perhaps the order might have not been ideal, because I think everyone was kind of coming for the hand rolled thing. So maybe the positioning of the pairing should have been first, just to get people's. Yeah, because and I say that only because I think at times they struggled to make sure that everyone was kind of paying attention, which I didn't think was fair, because it was a good session.
Yeah.
But I think that's just kind of that 1 hour of focused attention. We're all a little tough to focus on the shiny object for an extended period of time as cigar smokers. So.
Yeah, what John said, I echo everything on that.
Okay, so this was Manuel doing the session, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I had been through it in the DR, so it was just with different. This was the 120. I had been through it with the 115, so it's a good seminar. But I think John nailed every point with that.
Okay.
The pairing council asked a lot of questions about the rum. We were told it was agricole rum. We reserve judgment on that. Where our palates are telling us we're not entirely convinced it's 100% agricole rum. We're gonna take them at their word, but there is going to be some follow-up questions and follow-up research just to validate that.
Okay. And then session after that was the Connecticut River Valley presentation.
Yes.
And,
So
all right, Mike.
Mike, go.
I popped my head in briefly. And
Yeah.
listen, it's got to be difficult to do that whole platform, be by yourself, kind of speak. You got the lights beaming. There's no back and forth. So Nick was doing a wonderful job, and then they kind of open it up to questions.
Yeah.
And Ben Lee gets up and he says, "Hey, and Ben has a very distinct voice. He's like, this is Ben Lee." And he asked the question, and Nick has no idea who he is. He can't see him.
Right.
"I'm sorry, who are you? Ben what?" But and I could just feel Ben being like, "What?"
Ben's like, "It's me, dude." He's like,
It's
Is
me.
that your offices, for God's sakes?
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
So of course, when the minute that I saw Ben, I was like, "Dude, Nick doesn't know who you are, man. Like, what are we doing? Are you even media at this point?"
Nick big time, huh?
Yeah. Oh, big time. It was crazy. So That was all. That was the big kick that I got out of that. So,
All right.
Yeah.
amazing.
So Nick,
Yeah,
did really-
sorry, go ahead, Coop.
I was Nick did a really good job. So my feedback on this is it was very educational. It was like the history of Connecticut and tobacco. If someone else would have did this though, I don't know if they would have held the attention. I think because Nick was doing it and he did a really good job at laying it out, I think it kept people's attention. But it might have been if the wrong person delivered that could have been disastrous, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's it was a good piece, and I think
Yeah, agree.
I mean kind of is the fly on the wall listening to people talk afterwards. A lot of people learned a lot, like a lot of retailers there said, they learned a lot of information they didn't know. And I think it speaks volumes to like, listen, there's an appetite for that kind of presentation. And I think, the PCA should seek out that sort of presentation going forward. If someone wants to get up and talk about broadleaf or talk about Sumatra or talk, obviously there's a lot of tobacco knowledge to be shared. And I think that's a great venue to do it. I think people are very receptive.
Yep.
Cool. And then after that, it's the annual meeting. Or was there something?
No, they did the annual meet. They moved it pretty long. That's where they announced the board members and they go through the financials. I think they kept it to not too long. I mean, they got through it probably in
40
about
minutes, something like that.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking 30 minutes. Actually, it wasn't. Scott Pierce actually didn't do it this year because he got called back east for a personal situation. So they had people filling in. I think they did fine filling in too with that.
Yeah, you can only make an annual meeting so exciting.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's that's when a lot of people took the opportunity to go use the facilities and do other things. But we were interested in the numbers. They're displayed quite clearly. They were explained quite clearly. And to be, as media, that is something we look forward to. And it was handled as well as one could.
Yep.
All right. And then following that was the Padron keynote.
It was great, but they missed one opportunity. They should have shown the 60th in front of the group there.
Yeah.
That would have been the perfect thing, even if they put it on video. But it was great. What they did was great.
So what did their session consist of?
So it was surprising because I was expecting going in that it was just going to be George talking about Padron and talking about the family and just a spoken piece. But instead they came with this very well produced, very polished, hand-rolled level video about the Padrones. And I don't think it upstaged the hand-roll production, but I would say it was almost as good as the hand-roll production. I was very impressed. There was certainly
Most of it was Jose Orlando Padron, and it was probably the most folks have ever heard him talk. I mean, he was a little bit in the hand roll movie, but this was about like 15 minutes of him talking, and it was all there was subtitles, so it was easy to follow it, and you kind of picked up on all the emotions and stuff he was doing. It was very well done. I thought it was extremely well done, and then George came and he gave a few words, and then he brought the family up.
Brought the whole family up.
Yeah.
And I will say, Coop, it is possible because George is a pretty classy dude. And I think he probably looked at that as said, this is not where we want to sort of talk about our product specifically. This is not where we want to sort of advertise our cigar because maybe it's inappropriate for this time slot. And so, I think they could have done that, but I also applaud their decision not to do that because it wasn't specifically about, their product. It was
John. It's unnecessary, right? I mean,
you don't know about Padron.
You don't need to advertise Padron cigars.
Right.
People attend the PCA. I mean,
If you don't know, you shouldn't
not
even
going to
be
go
there.
check out the 60th anniversary.
Right.
I
Agreed.
can understand why they would choose not to.
Yeah, I think the seminars, I love the tone, as opposed to being in an overcrowded room a few years ago, where we've got some lawyers from DC talking about the lawsuit and the sky is falling. Tatawai was about the cigar boom, and unlike the original hand roll movie, it wasn't an appeal for. It seemed like the original hand roll movie in a lot of ways is a propaganda piece to get support in Congress. And the J.C. Newman was very serious. This was about the cigar boom. It was a celebration of tobacco. It talked about the factors that brought in Pete, and then to have Manuel come out and he made sure that everybody that didn't have a cigar got one. Everyone that
Yep.
didn't have rum got it. It was
Yep.
very engaging. And Nick's was PhD level material. I mean, he was going back to rocks with tobacco 2.5 million years ago and explaining the various different types of tobacco. And then Padron, it talked about why Padron's a success. I mean, you know, his focus upon honesty and about gratitude. I mean, what surprised me was Orlando Padron he's like, oh, on May 17th, I did this. And on May 18th, I did this. I mean, his recall of specific dates, it was the way the opening day should be. It was a celebration of our industry, a lot of different perspectives. And it wasn't, it was the best I've seen for an opening day. And it was really well done. And the meeting that the PCA did was short and sweet. It got to the point that they shared some details, but they didn't let other things get in the way. And I thought the first day, other than the fact that we didn't have water, and I take that part of that blame as being a part of the board, I thought it was very well executed from the beginning until the end.
Yeah, I would say much like we were kind of lauding the gala last year as bringing a lot of positive energy for the show. I think that whole segment from beginning to end brought in just a lot of positivity, good energy. Because obviously it's not our first rodeo. We know the reality of what it's going to be like being at the trade show for 3 days, and so so I can lie to myself about how good the first day is going to be. It's nice. It's nice to go in with the positivity and some good energy. So yeah, as you say, Jay, I don't think there's been a one that even comes close. And I think, if people are talking about what should we do for next year, I'd say replicate it as close as you can to this, because that formula was excellent.
Well, except for one piece.
Except for one piece.
Except for one piece and Aaron's going to get to that.
Well,
So-
I actually do have one thing I want to blame
Okay.
Jay for, and that's that background. What the hell is that?
This is the best Doctor Who of all time.
Ah,
Mr.
there we
Mr.
go.
Baker.
Got it. Couldn't
was
tell
way
with his
longer.
noggin in the middle of his head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have eyeballs watching over me.
If you just leaned in a little bit, it would look like you're wearing a hat.
Yeah, but the positive energy from that opening was great. I think we lost a little momentum in the last presentation. Part of it was, in my opinion, it was a commercial, and part
So
of it was only
let me
10 or
set it up.
15 minutes.
Let me set it up then. So I'm assuming we're talking about the kind of the panel with Ernesto, Tim, John, and Savona. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost felt like it wasn't planned, but it was. I think they should have either not had it or given them 40 minutes. It was just they were trying to squeeze so much into 15 minutes that I think they were like, oh, we'll just talk about our new products. They didn't really have much time. I mean, you could have Ernesto Carrillo talk for 45 minutes about anything, and I just don't think they had enough time to communicate what needed to be communicated.
Especially, I've seen the Ozheads podcast. Some of the chemistry those guys have it pretty good. But that wasn't the part that was the negative. It was the opening reception.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll focus on the positives before Coop focuses on everything that he hated.
It's coming up. It's coming up.
Unlike last year, you did not have to wait an hour in line, and you got your cigars and you got your lighter and cutter. It would have been nice if the lighter actually had fuel in it at the beginning. And I don't know, everybody had sat in that room. Nobody moved for 6 hours. So I was so hungry. I was happy to eat nachos and whatever subgrade chicken that was. But there really was no place to sit, and the bar wasn't that great. And I'll let Coop take it from there. I mean, you got a lot of cigars and you got some food, but it last year felt more elegant. Is that the word I'd use, Coop?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Yeah.
And part of that's our fault. Part of that I'll blame Resorts World. We were going to do that at Resorts World. It was going to be very posh and nice. And we said, well, they're like, you can do it outside. We had everything set up. It was going to be great. We're like, what if it rains? And Resorts World was unwilling to work with us. And they're like, well, if it rains, you're going to get wet. So it was kind of a mad scramble the last 60 days to put it over there. And I don't know. We as an organization have really improved. But let's be honest. We are not able yet to put on a presentation like Pro Cigar, which I was just a Pro Cigar. And even though they have no control or any discipline when it comes to the level of music, Pro Cigar knows how to put on an event and a party, and the PCA will have to do better next year. I'm going to leave it at that.
So aside from last year, the lines, that was a very good party. Okay, that was a
That
great
was that was hands down the best gala that has been
Yeah.
done.
right. Well, some of those general ones were pretty good too, but
They were very
but it was
good,
okay.
but this was the best. Last year was the best.
But the lines were the problem.
Yes.
So you had basically a straw man to build off of, and they went completely backwards and regressed.
Well, the thing
I
with
mean-
last year's though too is we got almost double the attendance that was expected. So that was part of the problem with the lines.
Yeah.
And I think the other problem was we just didn't anticipate what a bottleneck guy would be at the end of the line. Okay. Because he was so popular and everyone wanted his photo, it kind of jammed things up. So I know that when we left the party
Right.
last year, that was the one thing that we all said was, hey, this has to be fixed with the lines. That was the one big thing that we all kind of came to the conclusion of.
This was a party that was done on the cheap. It had an industrial feel. I mean, the centerpiece appetizer was nachos. The bar was substandard. There was no place to sit. What are we doing here, guys? I mean, why even bother? I mean, it was just, to be honest with you, that party we got it. That's the one. If there's one thing they took a major, I thought the party they had 3 years ago, remember when Espinosa and Crownheads did it? I
Yeah.
thought that was better than this party. This was a terrible party. I just think, like I said, they could have done better with this one, knowing that they had a pretty good formula last year, and just some tweaks I think would have worked.
I'm not going to use the terrible word. I think the problem is that you go from a gala that has set a new bar for what a gala can be, and then you come back to sort of what galas have been at times in the past, and it just feels very jarring. You get a little bit of whiplash. So, to Jay's point, I did appreciate that they gave the cigars out at the door. I think that
I
was a
did too.
smart move. But all the other points of there's no place to sit, the bar service isn't great, the nachos were definitely not the right way to go.
We had better nachos at the media compound.
We did have better nachos at the media compound, which is saying something.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just, the two elements that we're missing from the gala is, number one, you have to ask, why am I attending the gala? What is it about the gala that I want to attend for? And last year there was like 5 reasons I'm attending the gala. And this year it was like, well, there's some cigars and I can see some people and hang out, maybe get some food. And there wasn't enough there to sort of say, well, I want to stick around
Hey,
for
Jay,
45
can I ask
minutes.
a question? I'm assuming the convention center did the catering. For the
Yes,
gala?
they did.
Oh yeah, they suck. It's almost a no-win situation.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you an idea how messed up that convention hall is for food, in order to book sandwiches in our booth, those had to be pre-booked before February 10th.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. That's how lackluster a catering service they are, that they literally need a 45-day notice to get you sandwiches and pizza, cold pizza and overpriced sandwiches. So yeah, I mean, the deck is stacked against you using the Las Vegas Convention Center to do any sort of catering at all.
Yeah.
They're just not good at it. They've never been good at it. They just suck at it.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, and I'm not trying to take away from anything that you guys are saying, is the seminars were so well attended. Unlike last year, where people would go to a seminar, leave for an hour, come back, people were sitting for 5-6 hours. And I know for me personally, by the time I got to the gala, I was exhausted. And I think not having a place to sit down was just, they were exhausted because they hadn't eaten for 6 hours. And I think that if people had come in, like maybe if the seminars weren't as strong and people had some time to refresh during the day, it wouldn't have seemed so bad. And I think that once again, the deck was stacked against us there. And I think also, I mean, all credit to the PCA staff. They do a great job, but not having Scott Pierce there this year, Scott is a master at putting out fires. I mean, for example, last year when there was an issue with the line, Scott did some workarounds, and also there was some issue with chairs. Scott immediately got more in there, and they were down at one person who's Scott has great long suits at taking care of things when they arise, and that was just one of the impacts of him not being at the show. But to the credit of the staff and the board, I think that the rest of the trade show went well without Scott. But I think if Scott was there, I think we would have seen some upgrades and adjustments. Obviously, the food wouldn't have changed, but that's maybe just me being a well-wisher.
Speaking of impacts briefly about people not being at the show, I know that the nachos may have been better at the media house. However, I did have to pack heat in order to be secure, Aaron. So next time, if you can make sure that when they stay at a particular place, everybody's safe. Okay. For the love of
Oh,
God.
oh, come on.
I wasn't able to pick the place this time, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
they would have to pack heat, but Aaron does a better job. I'll admit.
Yeah,
that.
and I know there was as we drove up to the house, there was like with the guys' kids, there's like a little ice cream cart, and one of the guys like, we should stop get the ice cream cart. I'm like, I don't know that the Canadian needs to educate you, but first of all, I don't think they're selling ice cream, and number
Cream
two,
in
you
the car.
definitely don't want to stop
Yeah.
because
So
whatever they're selling, you
Yeah.
don't want to be buying that.
Open the windows, lock the doors.
I think the house was fine. I think the proximity was fine. I don't think the neighborhood
Proximity
was
was
great.
excellent.
Yeah, the
proximity
neighborhood
was
wasn't great.
excellent.
I mean, we acknowledge that part. Yeah.
And is he meteor? For the love of God, can I tell you?
Yeah.
oh
I just got
wow.
mugged on the way walking on the driveway. It was crazy.
I hadn't heard any of this yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I
best
said,
was Arnold Seraphin came at 7:45 in the morning with cigars.
Who
But
picked his house?
other people could follow that example. It'd be
Oh.
good.
I picked the house. Normally, Aaron picks the house. I could tell that there's a significant difference here.
Well, it was
You
approved by
understand, in
everybody on the
Canada,
team.
everything's clean, so it doesn't matter where you choose. It's beautiful, it's safe.
Yeah.
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 At least there was seating in the patio.
It was
this
definitely
time.
our best proximity though to any, like, we were able to go back, in between stuff and everything.
Yeah,
you know?
no half an
nice.
hour.
Yeah,
half
that
an
was
hour
a bit.
drives.
Yeah,
Metal detectors at the front entrance would have been nice. So
Just we trust you to be responsible. I'm just saying,
do we?
The media house was fine. The bathroom was a little scary, but it was fine.
you were in that other bathroom. Yeah, our bathroom was fine actually. That other one, I heard stories about that.
Oh yeah,
one.
the one they sent me into. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that was the other.
That's where they kept the nachos.
All right, let's go behind the scenes a little bit. Probably only like 3 people are interested in this topic, but set up for the show. So kind of for Steve and Mike, was that kind of smooth sailing behind the scenes, or did you have kind of some of the normal gotchas always pop up?
Steve,
Well, for me, so as much as the convention center sucks for food and catering, they're actually pretty efficient for doing setup. Unlike the Sands, we did not run into the normal problems with electricity and Wi-Fi and carpeting being wrong and boxes being missing. So I think the setup, they're really the union crew there, even though they charge, they're actually slightly cheaper just by a hair than the Sands. But I actually think they're really efficient at that part of the gig over there at the Las Vegas Convention Center. So every time I've done a show there, I've always liked that part of it. So I thought the setup was pretty smooth. Things that were a little unsmooth that interfered with me in the setup was the PCA really wasn't prepared to do the appointments for the booth registration for the next year.
Okay.
She was definitely quite flustered and ill prepared. And the breakdown was a real hassle because of the incredibly condensed schedule.
Yeah.
They wanted us to do the breakdown. And I got to be honest with you, I missed the half day because it's really hard to ask my people to look, you're grinding to get the show, right? So you're like running on empty before you get there. You do all the crazy setup. You then do 3 days of dancing like a chimpanzee. And then at the end of the 3rd day, oh my God, you only have 18 hours. Actually, you didn't even, you had about 18 hours, 15 hours before you had to be completely cleared out. And normally what we have is we have that half day, and then we have the whole next day. And then you typically have part of the next day. So it was a bit of a mad dash to do the breakdown at the end of the show. I mean, it was a pretty exhausting thing to have to do the breakdown the way the breakdown worked. Now, I'm imagining either it was because they were trying to save money or because there was some show coming in, the following Wednesday they had to load in. I don't know what the reason was for the short condensed breakdown, but yeah, I really disliked that. That was it was very arduous.
And Mike, I saw you brought a whole crew with you to help you with all the setup stuff going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love Palmer. So when if Palmer's gonna make it, if he can make it, he can't make it in June and July. So March worked for him. So I
Right.
definitely brought him. And then as you kind of grow and develop, you're just trying to pull a page from the guys that are doing things right in your book. So, you have a little bit of Salesforce, and of course you can neglect them and abuse them into building things as well.
Yeah.
So like those things definitely made a difference. Steve hit the nail on the head as far as assembly, as far as the employees are concerned. It is way easier to build out in that convention center. I would give, hey, where do you want the box? Hey, it's there, whatever. As loading and unloading, the employees were very easy to work with. They're very accommodating. Personally, for me, like we left to go get dinner and then we came back to kind of finish things up. Yes, it does suck to do it. I'm just like, hey, let's dig deep and let's get this done.
Yeah.
I want it over with.
Yep.
Yeah, and the chimpanzee dancing spot on as well. But I just want it over with. I don't want to come back the next morning. I want to pack it all in and and if I got to be there till 10 o'clock at night just to square it away, I want it squared away. I mean, that's pretty much what happened. And we reached out to you guys afterwards to come over to the house. So, I'm glad it was over. And even though the time restraints were kind of tight, I'd much rather say, all right, let's go, let's rally, even after pizzas and all this other stuff, we're like, oh, but you still did it. So, I'm glad it was done. And if I had that extra time, I would have much preferred it to be done anyway. So,
Right.
yeah. And yes, I brought people.
And so I
McTavish-
saw, are you on a bad ankle or something? What's going on with you?
So yeah, being the idiot that I am, I was running football routes with my son, and I caught the ball, and since I'm no longer 20, I tore my
Been there.
calf.
Yeah, I've done that,
wow.
Mike.
Sounded right. It sounded. I thought I got hit by a rock. I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Punks threw something at my leg just because
Right.
and it was pretty bad. It hurt pretty bad, but it was kind of at the beginning of practice.
Yeah.
And, you're trying to teach these kids, hey, never give up, always
Yeah.
never quit, keep going. So what did I do? I just hobbled along next 45 minutes and kept
Yeah.
running routes. So then I looked like the diabetes commercial with this leg that just exploded for almost 3 weeks, and it was very colorful.
Mhm.
And it was bad. And my wife said, you got to get the scooter. And a buddy of ours is an ortho. He said, you need to put in a boot, dude. So
Yeah.
I put in a boot I negotiated terms with my wife to not bring boots
Yeah.
to the show, but I wasn't getting away with the scooter. And I'm glad that she forced me to do it because, I mean, dude,
That's
the
a lot of
walk
walking. Yeah.
things, forget it. It
Yeah.
would have been, and it was still swollen and all this other stuff. So,
Yeah.
but it was
Well-
nice to have a chair wherever I went.
Yeah.
The other thing
Cool.
too is nice probably for you was I like the condensed layout. I like the show being tighter.
I like that too.
I like the hallways not being as wide. I know I'm calling them hallways, but the aisles. I like
Yeah.
the aisles not being as wide. I think that worked out really well because I think that for everybody, the less physical distance they have to travel, the better it is for all.
Yeah.
Steve, was it you that said, I can't remember who said it, but I thought it was you who said you liked that it wasn't a straight line from the front of the show to the back of the show. You kind of had to navigate a little
It
bit.
wasn't me because I never made it past my booth, so I don't.
Yeah,
know.
fair.
Yeah.
There was another exhibitor that pointed out, and I think it was a good observation, that you couldn't just walk in a straight line from front to back. So if you were trying to do that, you were forced to sort of
Well, I have really good news
juke a little bit.
John, and I'm sure Mike can attest to this, having picked out his booth location for next year. You will definitely be not going straight anywhere because there are 8 billion columns in the convention center at New Orleans. In fact, it's gonna be really
Yeehaw.
hard. I mean, it's like there's a column like every 4 feet. It seems.
Don't walk backwards in the New Orleans Convention Center.
It's very horizontal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, very, very horizontal with like 8 million columns. Be like it be at the Parthenon or whatever.
Hey,
All right.
I'll share some
Go ahead,
inside
Jay.
baseball with you about setup day. I came over Thursday between our meetings, and Steve had all these bottles of bourbon, and I don't drink anymore, but I wish I did because he was putting away because he had too many bottles. But Noah's Mill, all top Colonel Taylor, all top shelf stuff. Steve is a serious bringer of the booze, and that was impressive to see what he had at his booth.
How do you think you get these customers to overbuy? You gotta liquor them up.
Hey, I'm drinking water, and I still spend a ton of money.
got to throw in a couple watches.
Throw in a
throwing
couple
some
boxes.
booze, beef sticks all the way around.
Yeah.
Man, I
know?
can't believe we got rid of all those damn beef sticks.
Everybody was
2,000
hungry.
of them.
Steve,
No, 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 we
Steve.
got that.
Steve, the food was so bad at the convention center. My brother was always handing me beef sticks. Here, you hungry? Have a beef stick. It was better than anything that they had there food wise.
Thank the Jack Links people. They were the ones that kindly donated those.
All right, so we get to the
North World
actual
hate
trade
you
show
guys.
opening now, right? And I was told that John McTavish was so impressed with how smoothly this process worked that he wanted to have the floor himself and share his thoughts.
Oh no.
Well, let's start with a little positive before we get into negative town. The registration process I thought went quite smoothly.
Great job they did with it.
as well as any other year. I'm sure there's some tweaks. There's always continuous improvement that can be made. But as for us, walk up. They had tablets. All the staff were extremely helpful. For people who didn't know their own name apparently. We had one guy who wasn't in the system, and they got it rectified in like 5 minutes. So that part was smooth sailing. The opening day, maybe not so much. So I'll just kind of set the stage for a lot of people who don't know, because we seem to be retelling this story over and over again. So typically, in the past, the trade show has always been 3.5 days. Everyone who exhibits and even retailers absolutely dread the last day. It's an added expense. It's extra time at the show. Everyone by the third day, everyone by the second day kind of wants to get home. They're really kind of done with the whole process. They just really want to get out of there. And so for the longest time, it's kind of been this thing hanging over everyone's head. And it was announced last year that the fourth day, the half day, was going to be cut. So we had a good dialogue last year at the media panel event with the PCA board, and for the media members who attended, and I welcome all the media members to attend the sessions. We had a really good, productive dialogue where we said, look, we totally understand the business need to drop that last day. If we were exhibiting, we would completely be in the same boat for you. But for us, believe it or not, that last day ends up being truly, even it's only 4 hours, I think, is typically it's 10 to 2. It's the most productive single day because most of the retailers have gone home, so we're not interrupting business. A lot of the booths are empty, so we can kind of roll in, get photos unimpeded, get interviews, get pictures, and like honestly, if you look at it on a curve, I think the most number of booths that we can get has always been day 4. Would you say that's fair, Coop?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the dialogue, Scott's always been very good, and the board's been very good about working with us, and they proposed the idea that they would extend the opening hours for media access by 1 hour, and it was, I think, a really well proposed compromise. There's, again, the benefit to us is that we're not competing with retailers because we don't want to compete with retailers. We want to make sure business can be done. We don't want to interfere with that. So even though we know that by day 2 or day 3, some people are going to be rolling in a little banged up in the morning, at least we can get photos, and we can get pictures, and we can get a lot of work done. So that sort of sets the stage for, we rolled in at, I don't know, 8:45, Coop? Is that about right?
About 8:45, yep.
So I was kind of mentoring some guys who, the Lounge Lizards, who are new to the trade show. They've got a podcast. And so they messaged me right away and said, hey, we're being told we're not going to have access to the floor. So I tried to sort of intervene with a PCA staff to say, hey, this is going on. Let's kind of nip this in the bud before this becomes a problem. And my understanding was it was handled. Some people got in.
Hey, John, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so when we've seen this happen, usually it's just a miscommunication between PCA staff and
And
security.
it's happened almost every show.
Yeah, it's happened in other shows. It's always a miscommunication with security.
Yeah.
This turned out wasn't the case. John, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got up there, and we have appointments. We have appointments booked for the first hour. There was some exhibitors that we struggled to get last year because of their level of business. So Coop kind of front loaded them to make sure that we got them out of the way. And so we rolled up there. Half the team got in, and half the team didn't. So that was a little frustrating. Again, it's not my first rodeo. We've been through this in the past. As Coop said, Hanlon's razors always don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to ignorance. We know that security aren't necessarily going to be in the know, so we just attributed it to, look, they didn't get told. I ended up having Jose Blanco come over to rescue me and basically get me admittance, and I think I just made our appointment, and so all was good. And then Coop, you can probably take it from there for the rest of day one.
Yeah, so the one thing that we were really unprepared for something like this to happen, because we didn't, it had been discussed. There was an email sent out on October 20th, and I'm happy to put this email on the screen if people want to see it. And in the email, what?
You didn't want to show it to anybody.
No, this is an email from PCA.
Oh, we'll get there.
This is an email from PCA.
Trying to
And it
bring this
says,
up.
I'm going to read what it says. It says, your press badge will get you access to all Friday activities before the show, including the opening reception. And on all show days, media badges will have access to the show floor at the same time as exhibitors to allow for some additional time for meetings and interviews. Now, I'll say this. I have communicated an email to the PCA on all my thoughts of what went down in here. So there's nothing they're going to be surprised about what I'm going to say. Bear and I went to talk to 2 of the PCA staff members, and we were basically we were scolded. Like, we were scolded, saying like we were asking for an exception. It was unreal. I mean, because like I said, and I didn't have this email on day one. I found the email that night. So eventually, like I said, we got in, but we were accommodated to get in, is kind of what it was. And so we thought this problem was resolved.
Well, some of us thought this problem was resolved.
We thought, then we were told by Joshua Harbarsky, who's the deputy director, hey, this is solved. You're not going to have any problems on day 2. Day 2 comes along.
We were doing some side bets at the house before day 2. And, being a member of Developing Palates, I certainly skew towards a more cynical side. So I said, I think there's probably around a 30% chance that we get in the second day without a hassle. I fully came prepared for shit to go down, and shit did go down. And, basically what happened was security doubled down. So in this case, security said, not only are you not allowed in, but the only way you're going to be allowed in is if you show me your phone and can demonstrate an appointment or an email from an exhibitor that shows that you have a meeting in the first hour. And listen, I'm Canadian, I'm not American, but I didn't react particularly well for that. I'm not going to be giving some random security guy my phone. I don't think that's appropriate. I also don't feel as a media professional that I need to justify myself or explain myself or seek permission. It was very jarring. It was very unpleasant. And, the back and forth between security and Ben essentially was, Ben said, okay, well, who's instructed you that this is the case? And the security said, well, my boss. And Ben said, well, who's your boss? And security said, well, it's this person from the PCA has specifically instructed us that you are not to have access unless you specifically have a meeting scheduled. Again, fortunately, we sort of, I think at that point, collectively, I think security realized we're about to throw down and sort of acquiesced, but things were a little heated at the door at that point. And I think about 15 minutes later, I think I sent a message to Aaron saying, I'm not sure that I necessarily want to return to the PCA trade show for 2025 in New Orleans. To say I was pissed would be a slight understatement of the situation. I think, there's the scene from Pulp Fiction where Jules goes off, and I think that's more adequate representation of kind of my reaction. And I consider myself a fairly even keel person, but I was definitely a race car in the red. It did not set a positive tone for me for day 2, needless to say.
Yeah, day 3 wasn't a problem because everyone got in at 9, so that wasn't the problem.
I just want to say that I couldn't get any work done in my meetings at Tatuai or Fuente. I was about ready to suspend your LA privileges. But
we were blowing up
all I
Gabe's
could
phone.
tell, oh my God, I couldn't get any work done.
Yeah.
But yeah, the PCA acted in a manner that was inconsistent with my understanding. But I know Josh and Scott Regina got involved. I thought it was taken care of. I'm not sure where the breakdown was in the second day. All I can tell you is that there was a desire to get the media in early, and it somehow fell through the cracks. And ultimately, that's egg on our face. And we'll try to do better next year. That's all I can say. We would welcome you back in New Orleans. But
Really?
Why? Security is security.
How did that come? It saves me at least 4 ounces of booze. So you do me a favor here.
4 ounces, Steve. I'm pretty sure I went through 4 ounces in the first 10 minutes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it was, this year we actually added 2 people to the Coop crew. We had, and we upgraded equipment and stuff like that. So we invested more in this, and we were counting that hour, believe it or not, was critical to us, and it put us behind both days because we were dealing with nonsense from the PCA on that, and it shouldn't have been. And I was hoping I'd get an email back really quickly saying sorry for the mix-up, and it would have been all done. I haven't even heard back on that yet.
Yeah, and I will say that the day one interruption, potentially could have cost us a booth interview with one that was almost missed last year, and it would have been a major exhibitor.
One.
So
Yep.
that would have been bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Agree. Totally agree with you on that.
All right. So entry issues resolved by day 3, sounds like. So
Well, it was by default because everyone got in at 9 on day 3.
Yeah,
Yeah, some kind of boxing, something between you guys and the PCA board. Jay, you got to decide. You got to decide where you're going to be here on this. But I want.
Choose your champion wisely. That's all I'm saying.
Jay was
Choose
a big
champion
Jay
wisely.
advocated
still
for us
talking.
well. Jay advocated.
They
for
were
us well
still
on this.
talking about it on Monday night, and I think I impolitely was kind of like, "Can we move on?" But I understand you guys make you guys made appointments. You relied to your detriment, and you were put in a bad position. And all I can say is, the PCA, we're sorry. We'll do better. And obviously that doesn't make anything better. But
as long as you know what rule number 1 is, Jay. Don't be sorry, be better.
Yeah,
that's right.
it was documented. It was in the email. That's what the whole thing is. Why it's so preposterous that this happened. It was in the email.
I'll give you an example of how you handle dropping the ball. We went to Dunbarton, and they were doing a drawing for a watch, and we were supposed to get 2 tickets, and we only got 1. When I came in and advised Cindy about that the next day, I got an apology. I was treated graciously. It was no issues. So I think that the way the team Saka handled a miscue was much better than the PCA in that situation. Kudos to your wife, Steve.
Yeah, my wife said,
and I still didn't win the watch.
Send an email. That's all I want to know.
I didn't send an email.
If we're looking for suggestions, and certainly I think when we have the media session with the PCA, which will come hopefully at some point in the near future, my advice would be, I think it'd be wise to have someone from the PCA there to smooth over the first half an hour, because like I said, we go into the trade show with the expectation there's going to be miscommunication for security because they're just trying to do their job. So it's good to have someone to say, no, this is fine. Everything is good. Please let these people in, and just move the line along and sort of address it as it comes up. I think that would have been handled in 5 minutes flat.
Instead, the person whose name was on the email stood there and said nothing. I mean, that was what was really, and I didn't know it was that person's name on the email until that night when I found the email. I'm like, that's the same person who was with us when we were he wasn't the one scolding us, but yeah.
And can I make a request?
Damn it.
Throw
whoever under the bus. Let's light them ablaze.
I think it rhymes with pizza.
Yeah. Last year, I would say this during the media, what do they call it, press conference. The media had some concerns and they didn't express them. So what I would encourage the media, and yes, I'm throwing people under the bus here, please come to the PCA meeting that you're going to have and express your frustration. Don't ask Coop to speak for you. Don't ask McTavish to speak for you. I think any media that's listening to this, express your concerns, because I think 8 or 9 complaints is better than 1 or 2.
Yeah,
because it drives home the message.
I'm hoping other people communicated this to the PCA in writing, like I did. So
in writing,
yeah. But I'll
Did
be
you
honest,
do,
it was
return
written, it
receipt?
was
All
written,
caps.
but it was, no, but look, it wasn't, I actually sent that, I'm gonna be really transparent because I didn't want to get on here tonight without PCA knowing my feedback. Like everything I said tonight is in that email. It's documented that, so I don't want to blindside them. They got the email this morning on it. And it was sent to every person who I touched base with that day.
To whom it may concern.
All right. So we had gotten a little preview from Steve and Mike about the condensed aisles and more condensed layout, but let's talk about some booths and kind of what the floor kind of looked like. What was your guys' initial impression seeing the kind of the layout and booth sizes and things of that nature?
But it was good. Yeah. I thought it was good. I mean, we're remember those economy to scale booths that we had 3 years ago? Those are pretty much gone right now. So I think everyone's back to reasonable booths and not like over. I don't think there's a couple of booths that maybe were on the extravagant side, but for the most part, I think they're reasonable booths that are worthy of a trade show, compared to the economy of scale we saw 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in fact, I think some companies might need larger boots next year. I think Saka, your boot's it needs to get a little bigger.
Yeah,
Pete
it
Johnson
is,
said
actually.
flat out,
We're getting
he
an
needs a new
extra
booth.
2 booth space, but I got columns in both the spaces, so I don't know how much bigger it'll be really.
Can you attach shelving to the columns? Is that considered appropriate, or stack products on every side of the column?
And a little birdie told me that LFD's getting a bigger booth, which they've needed for probably
Oh,
a
they
decade.
desperately need.
But I mean, that's a good problem to have. Is there was a
Yeah.
lot of people there, and that was a positive from my perspective. Though it was difficult sometimes to do business because everybody was busy at every booth.
I mean,
one of the
General's
things
booth
to take
was
into
very tiny.
consideration, though, is so I would look. I'm talking off the top of my head, but I think roughly 3 years ago, square footage was about 1,700 for a 10 by 10. And I think we're getting close to almost 3,000 for a 10 by 10. So, I mean,
Wow.
the costs have gone up significantly for you to expand your booth.
Mhm.
And of course, everything in relation to that goes up. More carpet, more furniture, and more of everything. And then I think the thing that I think is going to be interesting next year is, I mean, we're going to New Orleans. My understanding is for 2 years. And so you have no, I think that's pretty much open knowledge, is it not, Jay? 2 years is the plan.
We've announced that the PCA is in New Orleans in 2025. I don't know if we've announced anything beyond that.
Okay, I'll be very disappointed if it isn't, but hopefully it is. Not because I love New Orleans per se, but just the logistics. I don't know how many of the people, what they're going to do with their booths. You know what I mean? Are you going to create a new booth in New Orleans? Are you going to ship your existing booth to New Orleans? I know we threw away my Bob's Discount Furniture, so I now have to find something for Pay's Discount Furniture in New Orleans, buy new discount furniture. So I mean, I think that'll also have some impact as to what the booths will be like, because I don't know what the people will do. Now I noticed like Drew had a much more intelligently designed booth than they've had in recent years. It was a much more light, collapsible, shippable style. I noticed La Polina had a reduced booth format from what they had previously.
Placencia had a
Placencia-
modular booth
Placencia was
too.
the only one that went crazy, but it's designed modularly, so I don't know how crazy it really is. It looks like it weighs a ton, but that's their dollar. They can do whatever they want with it. So I don't know really. I thought the booths I saw looked very appropriately sized, and they looked good overall, I think. And I think again, having the condensed trade show makes it a little less an island unto yourself, right? Because if you're not in an encapsulated booth, which most aren't, you're seeing all the other booths all the time. So there's a lot of eye candy, no matter which way you're kind of pointing.
All right. So let's talk about actual business. And this is for Steve and Mike in regards to retailers coming to visit you and placing orders and things of that nature. Your perception on how well the show was for sales.
I can only speak about my little island. So what do you got on that, Mike? I mean,
Go ahead, you go first.
So I said I thought it was going to suck,
Mm-hmm.
and it ultimately did not. We wrote more business at this trade show than we did the previous trade show. Now, we didn't have the crazy growth because the last trade show we had was stupid how much more business we did. So the year before was like a big year, but we had a lot of really big brands, right? Red Meat Lovers, and we had a Muestra, and we had the Holiday, and we had all sorts of stuff. But we still, in the end, we ended up writing, I don't know what the final tally is yet, but we were probably up 10, 15 points in the end. Might be a little better. I'm not sure. So given how we were set up and what we had to offer, I was happily surprised with the business results of the trade show. It turned out much better than I had anticipated and better than the previous year for us. But I don't know if that's because of the trade show or if it's just because of where we are on the curve right now. Right? We're just kind of in a good curve. We're at a good moment right now for my little company.
Mike?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I agree. I think that we exceeded expectations in sales. For my company, I feel like we're definitely moving along at a good pace. So, the reorders that we're receiving at the show were fantastic. The relationships that we've developed over time have definitely made more progress, and there's more trust there, which I love. And the astonishing thing for me was opening a new accounts, the accounts that knew who we were, and the support that we got, just the conversations that I had with new retailers. I would say that 25% of the orders that we wrote were new accounts. So
that's excellent.
Yeah, listen, it's on a smaller scale, obviously, as
No,
far
but 25 points is 25 points in new accounts.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed that you did differently, Mike, is you were more proactive before the show than I think you've ever been before. Like you were beating the drum a little bit more.
A lot of emails.
Getting the message out there, which, very few companies in our industry do a really good job of that. So when you do something a bit more, it was very evident to me, and I was in my own little hell, and I still noticed that you were more engaging, than a lot of the other companies. And that makes a real difference because, just kind of top of mind, people think of it. Oh, let me go check that out. Let me go look at it. Yeah, I saw that. Let me go. So I think that the work that you put in before the show definitely helped pay dividends for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not trying to get better at your craft every year, then what are you really doing? And the reality is that guys like yourself and other guys that I admire, that I consider mentors in this industry, you try and pull a page from their book and formulate your own plan, right? So, I mean, as far as access to media, I don't know who else is more accessible than you, right? And you've done a hell of a job marketing and creating your brands. So,
but part of that's how I focus on the trade show. I have the reverse. I don't write any orders. I spend way more time with media because I look at it as an opportunity to get my message out to hopefully tens of thousands of consumers. And along the way, the retailers are also getting that. So every time I say something to a media person, I know that maybe that owner won't be watching that podcast or that video or that interview, but maybe two of the clerks that work in their store that are really into cigars will, right? So it gives me a way to communicate with the people in a way that, because look, when you talk to whoever, Craig Cass, that's not going to filter down to his staff the same way as his staff hearing it directly. So that's just kind of a perspective I have on the trade show. I've always been media forward. Even when I was at Drew, I was the guy, even though I was never the front man, I was the guy that was really interacting with all the nuts and bolts detail. John and Marvin, they're doing the pom-poms and the owner dance, but I was the one that kind of fed the right information, got them all that they need to know about the cigars and all that. So this is really just a continuation of this, just with more booze involved.
For sure. Well, and the consumer point as well. When you tell your story to all those platforms, you get different eyes and ears that understand who you are, and they actually go to the retailers and the employees of the retailers and they tell them about you. It's like, oh, whoa, I need to get on more with these guys, right? So, I made myself really, really accessible this time around, instead of whereas in the past I wrote the majority of my orders. I know every retailer, and at some point you have to realize that, look, this isn't scalable. How do I make this better? How do I do more things? a lot of emails, right? A lot of emails, a lot of social media marketing personally, and then giving yourself access to that and to the media as well. So, I'm not in it for the RAV4, right? I want to build a brand and I want it to be fantastic. And so it takes all of those things, and it takes learning from the guys who are successful in so many different avenues and building your own legacy. So, yeah, thank you very much for noticing. I really do appreciate that, man.
As exhibitors, what were your guys' sort of anecdotal? I realize you're kind of anchored to your booths, but what was your sort of anecdotal take on traffic over the 3 days?
I would
So
say,
go ahead, Mike.
no, you go. I like it when you go first.
So for me, look, we have scheduled appointments, right? So for us, a lot of our people are already scheduled. Like we had appointments pretty much every half hour for 3 days for 4 people, except on the last day, we had about 7 or 8 blocks that were open on the last day between the 4 people. Now, some retailers didn't show up for their appointments, some show up late. It's just kind of a natural way these things work out. So for me, I felt like the flow was really, really good for us. The one thing that I found that I noticed sitting in my little hole was I've noticed a real sea change in the retailers. I'm noticing that we're now getting to the point that this is becoming a much more youth-focused retailer base. That the people that were kind of ruling the roost, 20 odd years ago, 30 years ago, they're almost checked out. And it's really this younger group of retailers that are, between like 30 and 45. And I'm not saying you're above that, you're not, or you're under that. But I just noticed a general sea change of the general age of the owner operators that were coming to the show. And that works really well for a company like Mike or a company like me, that you're not legacy, you're more on the cutting edge of things. So you get a lot more of that kind of engagement. So I noticed that. That was definitely something I picked up on. And the other thing I picked up on, and even though the numbers were good and nobody was dissatisfied, but nobody seemed as cheerful this year as they were the previous year. And I don't know if that was just because they were just much more business focused. And maybe it's because of the way we do things in the half-hour blocks where, look, we used to give everybody an hour, but we can't give everyone an hour anymore. So what ends up happening is maybe they just come really prepared, but it just seemed very bam, 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 bam for us.
I think that both those statements kind of coincide, man. Realistically, when you have the age demographic of a 30 to 45-year-old, and that's being your majority retailers, I mean, that's realistically probably the most stressful point in your life, right? You got kids, you got, you have a family, you have a business that you're trying to see succeed. And yes, you're excited about things in the cigar industry, but at the end of the day, like things aren't the way that they were in 2020, where everybody was just smoking cigars and you could sell so many things. So, the things have changed a little bit where you're jumping the gun. Instead of being in July, it's in March. So, there is more, hey, I'm all about business, and let's keep it moving to that avenue. I think that those things are both kind of related. I also think that losing that half day, you did see more retailers leave earlier, and because of they weren't going to stick around. Personally, I'm fine with that. If people want to leave a day early because hey, I'm done.
You can't force people to write orders. I agree. Personally, I would really wish, I don't know if it's possible because I'm not involved, but I really wish it was a Tuesday, Wednesday trade show, Monday. Over the weekend thing, it's a little awkward, I think. I think you would get more participation for the duration if it was more on a work week schedule, I think. I could be wrong about it, but I'm not a retailer, so I can only look at it from my perspective.
No, I mean, like if things are on your slower days of the week, less things can happen from a retailer's perspective. If somebody doesn't show up on a Friday night, you're going to work. Somebody doesn't show up on Saturday or Sunday, you got a serious problem. So, if it's rolling into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're flying back out Wednesday night, or flying back out Thursday, you're back in for the weekend. I think that that's definitely most considerable for the retailers. So I would totally be for that. I think that losing that half day, you did see some people leave. my real question is, as far as the determination of where the list is and how many retailers that came to this show, if you wrote 1,700 badges on average or whatever the case may be, like where is the threshold for the no longer serious retailers and the tire kickers to start coming in? Because I hate that. You know, when you have the percentage of people that came to our booth and said, can we have, you know, you could see it from a mile away, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
See, we're like us, we actually canceled about 18 of the appointments that were made because
Right.
we knew the retailer, they just weren't worthy of the half hour.
right.
You know what I mean? It's not, we didn't say you're not worthy of the half hour, but we kind of called them up and said, listen, this is what we're doing. This is how much it's going to cost.
This is what we're looking
Happy
for.
for your business. But if you don't have something to really talk about, can we do it now with you before we get to the trade show? Or can we do it with you the week after the trade show? Because you're trying to reserve that time for the people that you're doing the most business with, the most growth, because they're the ones that are the most deserving, because they're the ones that are the most invested in your brand. Now, obviously, that's also a staffing issue. We had a bigger booth and we had more people, then you have more space for that. But I mean, we did increase people. We didn't increase space, but we did increase people by about, we had 3 people this year, and we handled it. But I mean, but it's always such a catch-22 because you never know going into it. You never know how much you're really going to need. You never know how many samples you're going to need. You never know how much time you're going to need. You don't know what's going to happen or not happen. You don't know what problems are going to come up because problems always come up, right? And for some retailers, that's the time they save that, hey, I'm going to go to the show and I'm going to pull a McTavish and I'm going to go nuclear. And, you know, you got to solve the nuclear bomb that you got sitting in your booth. And you don't know sometimes. So it's always a challenge. I think this is true for every industry. I think trade shows inherently are difficult for everybody. I think they're difficult for the organizers. I think they're difficult for the exhibitors, and I think they're difficult for the attendees. Look, it's a very dynamic, hectic kind of situation with a lot of moving parts. I mean, I know a lot of manufacturers didn't even get their samples.
Yeah, but you're a seasoned vet at this point, right? And so is your sales force. So you know when someone's coming up and they're not really looking to buy, right? They're looking, let me get some cigars or whatever. And it usually starts with, you got a price sheet? You know?
Tell me about your brand. I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, exactly. That whole thing.
Why
So go ahead.
So yeah, and look, and we try to be courteous because you don't want to discourage their business. Because you never know. Look, everybody starts off as a seedling to grow into an oak, right? So I mean, but we do tend to, here's all the information, here's some samples, let us give you a follow-up call next Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. You know, you try to do that as best as you can. And look, some people will be offended because they'll feel like you didn't give them the deference they deserved, right? And there'll be other people that are going to sing your accolades, but that's the way the whole trade show always is. I mean, it just is.
So the real question to me is, where is that number that that tire kicker format is really kind of overwhelming? Like this year, I didn't see it a ton. I saw it, you know, I don't know, maybe 3% of the time somebody
I would agree.
come,
I think most of the people that come to the trade show understand that they're there to do business.
Right.
And they're not there to just do business immediately. They're there to do serious exploration to eventually do business. It isn't like it was 15 years ago. I mean, we used to have, like, as manufacturers, we used to almost have like a laundry list of people, like on the post office wall of, okay, these are the 20 retailers that are just coming into your booth to mooch free cigars, to go put back in their bins, back in their store, so they can sell them for $4 a piece. I mean, there was one guy, I remember Marty, he used to drag a wagon behind him. Okay, Marty and his wife, and I hope they watch this, but I can't stand you people. You would come every year with your little red wagon and you tow it behind you, and you just go all over the trade show and get whatever you could get. Didn't even matter what company it was from, because that's why you were there, because that's how you made your nut, was getting the free samples to sell, you know?
So maybe last question before we get into the purchasing side of things. So as exhibitors, you know, we always hear post-show, never during the show, but we heard post-show some sort of scattering commentary about more media and retailer behavior in the booths. You know, and it's weird because we never seem to hear this during the show. It always seems to come up after the show. So, like, did you guys see any of that behavior? Is there anything that sort of stood out for you versus previous shows?
Not for me.
Yeah, there was one show that was saying it over the weekend, so we didn't hear it either. That's why I was curious on it.
I didn't experience it. Nobody complained about it. We had a few problems with some tickets on the watches. But this was part of the reason we learned something. The first year we did one raffle, this year we did three, so it's a bit of a learning curve.
Look, I love Jay. He's gonna complain about something. He
didn't win a watch. I
You
will say
did want
this,
that
though.
watch pretty bad.
Let me say this. This is nice this year. Everybody was at the booth and nobody got their ticket drawn that wasn't there.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's positive.
that was nice. I mean, I had a few consumers ask me about the watches. Why do you do the watches? And the reality is, do I think it increases sales? No, I don't. I think the people that are going to do business with us are going to do business with us. Maybe if a guy spent 4,400, he'll go to 5,000 to qualify to get in the raffle. Maybe you bump up $600 here or $300 there or whatever. But you do these little things at a trade show to try to make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more engaging. And when you think about how much you spend on carpet and Wi-Fi, the watches aren't really as extravagant as some people would think. You know what I mean? In the grand scheme of what it costs. And I think a lot of
Very
booths,
expensive sandwiches.
I think that most booths try to do something that's within their means. I think that's something that, for consumers from the outside, they go, well, gee, Placencia, like last year, gave away a slingshot, right? Like, wow, if they give away a slingshot, they're giving away a $27,000 vehicle. Does that get added in the cost of cigars? Yes, everything gets added in the cost of cigars. Being at the trade show gets added in the cost of cigars. Advertising gets added in the cost of cigars. When the manufacturer comes to your store and visits you, okay, he could never sell enough cigars in your store to justify what it costs to come to that store. Okay, so all of these things are part of it, but it's part of a brand building exercise because you want to be as engaging as possible with your consumers and also with your retailers. So I think that everybody tries to do something a little special, a little unique, and it makes the show more entertaining because we also want to encourage next year for more retailers to come. So the better the event is overall, the more that it helps the industry and your individual company to get more attention for more folks to come.
All right, let's switch over to the purchasing side. So this would be for Jay and Mike. Kind of going into this trade show, I'm assuming you had some sort of a budget and plan, but how did that work out for you in regards to once you got on the floor and started visiting brands?
Jay, we got to hear from you, Jay. Let's go.
Well, I spent a lot of money in 2022, and I spent a lot less money in 23, and I spent less money this year. I think where it hurt is maybe smaller brands, because a lot of the brands like Steve's that are growing, and I even visited Mike's booth this year. We spent more. So a lot of it was weird metrics this year. I was looking for cigars that were in three categories: cigars that were good, cigars that would be economical, and then what I call showpiece cigars, like the Monte Cristo Diamante, which that actually shocked me when I asked them. I ordered a humidor, and I'm like, well, am I one of the few people? They're like, no, everybody's ordered humidors. So you want to find different things that work for different segments. So obviously the bulk of the purchases is, core lines of what you need for your big selling brands. So like Dunbarton, I knew what brands I needed fill-ins, and I did spend a little extra to qualify for a second ticket. That's true. And then I look for brands like Mike's that I think are really good cigars that I want to have them grow. But then I also looked for inexpensive cigars. Ones that, there are people that come to my store that they don't want to spend $15 on a cigar. El Artista had some really good options in that. And then, I look for some showpiece cigars. I mean, obviously there are going to be more expensive cigars, whether it's a Paladin de Saka or it's a Legends from Padron, or I'm still kind of afraid that I ordered the Padron 60th and I have no idea what that's going to cost. But if it's under $100, I'll be shocked. It might be $300. I have no idea. So from that perspective, I spent globally I spent less money, but I think with all my brands, I spent more. Maybe some of the more established brands like Fuente and Padron, Oliva, I didn't spend as much as usual. But with the growing brands like Dunbarton and Foundation, and those brands are just starting to really explode, and that's a good thing. And you have to invest in your brands. So I don't know if that really answers your question. So it's complicated. Yes, there's a budget, but it's also you're trying to think of different client segments within your group, because you have some clients who buy inexpensive cigars and you want to get a good bargain for them.
Let me ask you this, Ray, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Don't you think that next year with the show being closer to like what it's like the third week of April?
Yeah, 11th to 14th.
Okay, so it'll be mid-April. It'll be about a month later. I think that'll make a difference with most retailers' budgets, though, because that whole March to April thing, I mean, it doesn't affect Mike so much because he's probably coming out of his best season. Well, you have kind of a steady local kind of shop, right? So yours is a little different. And you've got the online component. And Jay has a growing online segment that he does too. But I think for a lot of retailers, you can't spend what you don't have. So I think that I love the show moving to the springtime. March was too early. I think April will be better. Okay. I think doesn't sound like a lot, but if a retailer has a budget of 50K, well, maybe next year, because it's in April, they'll have a budget of 60K. You know what I mean? And when you multiply that times the hundreds of retailers, that extra little increase of 10, 15% more budget available for you to work with makes a huge difference in the overall sales of what's going on.
I mean, a lot of it for me is I'm going to buy what I'm going to buy over the year. But this year, an obvious constraint was we had 8 months between shows, and a lot of your competitors were shipping stuff the week of the show. And in fact, it irritated me so much, I just told my guys, just send it back. Fuck them.
I heard a couple of manufacturers actually bang the credit cards on Sunday when they couldn't even ship the product. They were already bagging the credit cards.
You want a phone call from me? Charge my card and ship the next day. I'm gonna give you shit about that. But next year there's 13 months between this show and the next show. So yeah, I'll have a lot more dry powder to buy things. But I'm not gonna buy more new brands. Maybe I get more double Chateau Fuentes, maybe I get more Padron 2000s, maybe I get more Sin Compromisos. But I look at it this way, and maybe I don't think the way other retailers think is in a year from January 1st to December 31st, I'm going to sell a certain number of Brickhouse. I'm going to sell a certain amount of Mi Querida. I'm going to sell a certain amount of whatever, Tatuaje, Brown Label. And at the show, you try to maximize where you can get it, maybe not a deal, but maybe something that's a unique offering. So like, for example, Pete Johnson had the books. So, okay, that's something I can only get at the show. So from that perspective, it doesn't really affect me, but I'm not going to lie. If the show was in July, which I would have had more money to spend on things, but I probably just would have bought deeper. So for example, if I had another 4 months, I probably would have spent, instead of spending 12 grand at your booth, I probably would have spent 16 but at the end of the day, in the 12-month period, I'm still going to buy X cigars.
Right, you're going to buy what you need ultimately. Yes, I agree.
So, like I think Perdomo is a good example. Perdomo didn't have anything quote unquote new, but if I had an extra 4 months of gathering cash, I would have done probably 3 deals instead of 2 deals. That kind of a thing, but that's just me. Every retailer does it a little differently. One of the things that I love to do is I love to buy stuff at the trade show and then everybody raises their prices. I just got to kick up on my margin. That's always a nice thing.
Mike?
How about you, Mike?
I mean, for me personally, it's more just investing with the same companies. Maybe you're looking for 1 or 2 guys that are kind of on your radar, but the reality is that there are a lot of people that are making cigars, and I only want to invest time and energy with brand owners and manufacturers that are going to invest time and energy with me. I consider myself a small retailer in this pond, and I want to be able to, I want to see that they're working hard. I want to see that, that they're doing what they can to encourage more consumers, because I'm going to encourage more consumers for their product as well. So, if you're a smaller brand owner or manufacturer and you're on my radar, that means that I'm seeing something that you're doing. I'm seeing, uh, social media posts. I'm seeing interaction and engagement, and I'm seeing those things, and I'm going to invest with you, right? And I'll do my best to put the right foot forward with you. Now, I also know that I'm not the guy that's going to say, well, hey, I got your cigars, and I didn't sell through them, as soon as they landed. And, like, I know that it's going to take time. I know that I'm going to have to start showing people your brand. So on that level, that number is probably more minute, right? And then you continue to invest deeper with the guys who you're continuing to grow with, your mid-level brands, that work better for a retail shop such as myself, right? I mean, your fine days are always going to move, right? You're, as far as mainstreams to some degree, right? Your Monte Cristos and some of those other things, like those are kind of a given, but then you want to invest with a specific percentage of brands and manufacturers. And you want to make sure that those guys are the ones that are putting in the effort. They're not just, hey, I made a cigar, right? And I still think that what's funny is you still see that to this day, oh, it's really good. Okay, great. So like, what are you doing? Like, well, I threw it out there. Okay. Do you, like, come on, man, you gotta, like, it doesn't just end there. It's, and like, for me being on kind of both sides of this perspective, it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work for a retailer. It's a ton of work for a brand owner. And, the mentality of just kind of sitting there, it doesn't work, man. You're going to find yourself 4 or 5 years in wondering why things haven't worked out, why you're not really making progress. So I think that you're starting to see some of those smaller brands, they were thinner this year, at least in my opinion. And, the ones that are starting to make a little bit of waves, I want to invest with. I want to continue to grow with, and try to help them
I
grow.
don't think the COVID years treated the little brands well, though. You know what I mean? I know we had a boom, but they were at a huge disadvantage during the COVID years because you couldn't do those in-store grind that often the little brand guys do because you weren't even allowed in the stores. You know what I mean? So they made it really, really hard on them. So
Sure.
I think even though there was a boom, I think it was lean years for a lot of even some of the established small brands that we think about. I think they're kind of on life support right now.
I
And I
think
think
that some of those guys, though, when you had that look, hey, new cigar in 2020, boom. If they were marketed right by the retailer, they sold, right? Boom, they were out. Now, the hard part is the second turn, right? So, hey, new cigar, same brand from before. This is new. It's like, I had that one last time.
Right.
So I think that, like, that's more often than not, look, we all know that their manufacturers are happy to take somebody's money, right? Hey, I got you. Here's A, B, or C. Here are your options. It's like, ooh, I really like C. Well, guess what? They're all the same. You just don't even realize it. And you may not be getting that when you buy it, but like that's a thing in this industry. So, having to, for one, working with a factory you trust, for two, investing the time and energy to make sure that it's done the right way, and then for three, kind of building and developing those brands. I think that having all of that and having that tenacity to do those sorts of things, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I could add one thing that Steve asked about, one thing I did this year that I haven't done in years is where it was available, I asked, hey, can you ship this April 15th or May 1st? Can you give me, maybe I have net 30, can you give me net 45? I was not afraid to ask that, and some companies were very willing to work with me. So that's one thing that I did, Steve, this year that I didn't normally do, just because of cash flow, so that everything wasn't shipping this week. So I said, hey, can we ship some things in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks? And that helped a lot too.
Yeah. And we had some retailers that did that. And look, we're accommodating. Obviously we want to pump out as much because, the problem that we all have where this kind of gets to be a bit of a jam up scenario is having the trade show in March also happens to be our worst time of the year too, because we're in Q1 and we're broke in Q1 because we're spending all the money on all the filler crops that are coming out, making all your heavy filler commitments, right? And then on top of that, you've had your slowest sales, right? Because we have slow sales in January, February, March, just the same way the retailers do. Our business mirrors their business, but yet we're having to spend just as much money so that we have cigars in July, September, and October, right? When, you know, August, I forgot August, we got to need cigars then too. So we're like really, Q1 is always a tough quarter in our business. It just simply is. It is for the bulk of our accounts. It is for the manufacturers. It's the way it is. So then you have the trade show expense. And even for a small company like me, I don't have the final total on what it cost us yet. I mean, I'm sure Casey's going to tell me, but I know there's no way we got out of there for less than 125, 130,000 actual out-of-pocket cash in a month that really you don't have the extra $130,000 that you would normally dedicate to tobacco or production or to something else. So it's a bit of a squeeze, you know, to do it so early. It really was. And look, it'll be easier because, like you said, you have 13 months to prepare. Well, we have 13 months to prepare too, right? So it'll make everything smoother having going back on a more normal annual to annual schedule.
So Jay and Mike, you might have mentioned it a little bit, but were there new brands that you engaged with this year that you hadn't worked with previously?
Yes. You want to go first, Mike, or you want me to go?
Jay, please.
Okay. There were a few new brands. A brand that, and a lot of these I've learned from the social media and the media. A brand that I had met with about a month and a half ago was Black Star Line.
Mm-hmm.
I got to try some of the cigars, so I went to the booth and I got some of those cigars, and my staff is already enjoying the samples because you know they don't know Eric's story. A brand that I didn't really plan to bring in, but because the relationship I have with my broker, yes, I actually have a positive relationship with some brokers, was the El Mago cigars.
Mm-hmm.
They even gave me a very ridiculous looking shirt because I asked for it, and I agreed to wear it for a while. I'm excited about their cigars. I brought in a couple other things as well. I just can't recall right now. We're excited to bring Mike's brand. We have some of Mike's brand. We have some of the. I'm going to have some of his core line, and we have some of the SBC. So we are excited to bring the Connecticut in and see if we can get some more forward momentum on that. And actually, to my surprise, I had not anticipated this, but I brought some General in that I haven't carried in years. Part of that is I like Justin, and I spent a lot of time with them at Pro Cigar, and I got really excited about the Cohiba Riviera, and we brought that in. And then I have to give credit to Bentley and Coop. I never thought I'd bring another new Macanudo line in, but Macanudo came out with a cigar that I just can't stop smoking, and those actually landed today. The Macanudo Emissary was very good, and then we brought in a Sancho Panza that was fantastic as well. And then we do really well with Hoy de Nicaragua. They were laughing. I came to my meeting. I'd already had my Drew Estate meeting, and they're keep trying to sell me and stuff. And I'm like, would you just look at the order? And they looked at the order like, oh, you ordered everything. I'm like, yeah, Hoyo does very well in our store. And they're like, well, why does it do well? I said, well, you make great cigars. I said, you make Steve Saka cigars. You're making cigars for Omar. You make great cigars for yourself. So we really increased our footprint with Hoy de Nicaragua this year. And like I said, there were probably a couple others I can't really remember. We've been wanting to bring in the Mexican Mermaid for a while from Danny.
Mm-hmm.
And good cigar.
You know, he gave me some samples about a year ago, and I can't stop smoking them. I'm like, well, the good thing is to have a good cigar. So we brought his in as well, and he was part of the. He was in the hinterlands over there with the BCA, but I was very excited. Then we also got some cigars from Diab. I haven't smoked this El Amira cigars yet, but I'm familiar with the factory, so who knows? Maybe we'll bring those in as well. So there were some exciting things to bring in. But I was really impressed with some of the cigars from Black Star Line, particularly the Fahrenheit. I'm looking forward to that. And I just, we try not to have too many new brands each year, but yeah, there definitely were some ones that I didn't expect to bring in. And, a company like Mago, just stopping by, talking to them, tasting their cigars, that's one of the greatness things about doing a trade show.
Mm-hmm. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I've been kind of back in the Don Doroteo guys for a little bit now, so I was excited about the new thing that they released. I took that on for sure. I kind of like the Founders guys too. I like the cigars that they're making. They taste really good. Again, same scenario. They're kind of innovative. They're working on different ways of developing as far as contact through retailers and trying to kind of level that game up. So whenever I see that type of effort, I'm definitely going to lean in towards it. Now, where it goes, it goes. You know, I have no idea. I just know that if you're going to invest time and energy and try and be different, then you have my support, right? And you know, who knows? In a year they could blow up. In a year, in success, or in a year they could blow up the other way. But you know, it's from what I can see and the effort that I'm seeing, I'm definitely in with them. You know, for me, the cigar that had the most notoriety, and I know it's a little biased, but man, that Cro-Mag Pennsylvania is friggin' amazing, dude. And I'm really excited about that cigar. I'm really excited about how it's been received. So, and it's I don't know if you guys have smoked it yet. I know that that Coop is in divorce terms right now, but hopefully one day they'll be able to be friends again, kiss and make up. But man, it's a hell of a cigar. It's a hell of a cigar. So I'm smoking one right now. I'm a big fan of it. I think they did a fantastic job on the blend, and Skip's gotten nothing but better and better on making a cigar. So
so I guess I can pretty much open this to everybody is in regards to like product availability. I can't remember maybe who mentioned it about and maybe it was you, Jay, that said that you weren't sure what availability would look like coming into the show, and that you were a bit surprised on that. So I guess everybody that was visiting booths could kind of speak to this as, were people showcasing things that they wouldn't be able to ship for a while? Were they not able to exhibit things because they couldn't even get the samples in? What were you guys saying when you were kind of visiting brands?
It was a few, Aaron. It wasn't as I thought there'd be a lot more stuff that wouldn't be shipped or unbanded, and it really wasn't the case. EPC had a lot of lines they showed that aren't shipping for a while, but they have a series coming out, the Essence series, and the first one's the Sumatra, so that's the one they're shipping. But they showed the other cigars in that series, so from that standpoint, they were kind of setting themselves up nicely for the year.
Mm-hmm.
We were over at Aventura, and they had one cigar ready, and the other one was in pre-release. The same with Cavalier. So there were a few, but it wasn't quite as bad as I thought. And I'm looking at a lot of there was a lot of stuff shipping now, shipping in April and May, and the stuff that's shipping, I'd say in the fall, is I could probably right now count them on one hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's or maybe two hands, but there's not. I was surprised. I think people had more stuff ready than I gave them credit for.
Yeah, I know you and I talked sort of pre-show, Aaron, about, my concern going into the trade show was we're going to have this sort of lull period between, call it, May to the end of June, where a lot of product just isn't going to ship. But echoing what Coop said, that was one of the questions we asked in a lot of booths is, okay, you got this new product, that's great. When is it shipping? And almost universally, with some of the exceptions Coop was mentioning, everyone was saying, well, it's shipping next week, or it's shipping like mid-April.
Right.
And that really surprised me, because I'd say, the one thing that I was expecting going to the show was tempering expectations to say a lot of this product isn't going to be available till, call it August, which, ends up being September.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There was less new stuff, though, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, there was definitely less new stuff.
But more new stuff than I think we were anticipating by a pretty wide margin, I would say. I mean, we were expecting maybe 30% of exhibitors, 35% of exhibitors to be actually having new product both on display and available to ship, and the rest having something they could talk about, but it wouldn't be available till, call it, end of Q2, beginning of Q3. If you're looking at it as a sort of maybe, and that was not the case.
yeah,
I'm assuming the maybe is the Fuente Padron collaboration, right? Is that shipping in 2024?
It
Well,
already
10 of them-
shipped.
10 of
did.
them. Yeah.
Oh,
Already
congratulations.
shipped. Sell
There's
it
a-
away.
They're going to be piecemealing shipping it throughout the year. It appears to be.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I gotta be honest, Steve. Like the way that you did it was pretty fantastic. Dude. You had the Wagashi, you had the Lanceros, you had the new Paladin de Saka, you had the bronze back. I mean,
On rack.
you had a lot of new stuff. I'm like, okay, all right,
And it was nibbling around the edges if you look at it, right?
sure. But you did it okay. So like, if that was the mentality, if you knew that you're running on short time, right?
Right.
It like how do I plan for this? You started thinking about it, June, if not earlier, last year, and
Right.
the real guys, they were prepared for this. So it was handled well. When these guys have product, or the product is going to be released relatively soon, so I think that you kind of saw that. So like, I purposely held back the Justice release because I knew that I didn't want to be under the gun, come the beginning of this year. So I received it last year and I said, okay, this will be our special release at PCA. So I think that a lot of guys that are intelligent enough to have that foresight, did, and it showed at PCA this year. Right, Jay?
Part of the thing too with the product releases,
Yes.
you also have to understand that so much of the product release schedule isn't really just a dollars game. It's also it's a noise game. So by having this ship right away, because everyone's always excited to come out of a trade show, they heard about something new. Okay. Give them something quickly to satisfy that. And then something to follow another 30 days later, and then another 45 days later. Because then you stage that out and you get that constant drum beat of, oh, I got you this. Because look, if everything lands from one company, look, there's only so many people that know about Dunbarton. And you don't want to hit them all where, okay, here's all the new stuff in the same 30-day period, because they can't buy it all or try it all either. Right. So it's kind of set up to like, okay, let's deliver Bronzeback Wagashi. Then following that, we'll do Sin. And then following that, we'll do that, and kind of stage it out that way. Because you're also trying to extend that message throughout the course of the year. There's still stuff that's going to happen this year that I didn't even talk about at the trade show. Right. Because I want to have something that when I get to the doldrums of summer to kind of get people excited about it. Now, whether I'll get it done in time, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to Nika on Sunday to follow up on it. But the point is, you do try to look at these brand releases as not just a let me grab the cash, but also let me have the opportunity to tell the story, and also have enough time for the retailers to absorb it and for the consumers to absorb it. So that's really very important in how you stage these things out into the marketplace.
Yeah, I think for us, for media, certainly in the past years of the trade show being July, mid-July, late July, I think what we're kind of seeing over time is that the first quarter of the year we really weren't seeing any releases, and then you were seeing a small smattering of releases sort of just before the trade show in June, and then we're getting more and more to the situation where stuff was shipping Q3. And then it started to slip into Q4, and it became this thing where most of the new products seem to be coming out in the last half of the year. And I think, from my perspective, one of the positives that came out from this trade show moving up is, first of all, we saw a number of new releases in the first Q, which is unusual but positive. And like I said, I think, seeing new product actually show up before the third quarter of the year, I think that's positive. I mean, I think
John,
it's
goes
positive
back to
for
why I think the spring to spring is better.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
more in the traction of how our industry cycles.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So it'll be better because really, when we deliver cigars to the retailers in November, they're almost DOA. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're going to get that first bite because it's new and fresh, but you don't really get as good a chance at that second turn. Where if we're now on this schedule where we're earlier, we can get cigars in the marketplace. And then maybe there's opportunity to get 2 or 3 turns on that product in that initial launch year. Because oftentimes you launch something at the end of July, you just debut something at the end of July, you deliver in October, and there's not enough time because then our retailers go into their cold weather period and they don't have the cash to even do the turn. They just have to live with what they have on their shelf. So maybe you have something that could be a runner that just the time frame prevents it from being a runner. So I do, like I said, tough this year, but in the end, this is the right thing to do, is to make this spring the spring schedule.
Yeah.
All right. So new brands, I guess, debuting at the show, or pretty recently launched. I guess maybe more for Coop and John. What was the volume of that like?
Coop?
Yeah, wasn't a huge amount of new companies this year. It seemed like there was less. I know Jay mentioned El Mago was probably one that we've been having our eye on with that brand. So, it's kind of funny because I was going through my who I visited, and most of these were return companies that I went to this year.
Mhm.
It just seemed like it worked out like that. So I didn't really see a ton of new brand. I mean, there were a lot of companies that did have something new to offer. That was good as far as lines go, but as far as, like I said, a new company, those seem to be small. I mean, like Som Cigars was another one I'm thinking that comes to mind, but it wasn't a huge amount this year. Som was actually one of the new companies we went to as well. So yeah, it seemed like it was smaller this year.
Hey, Coop, can I ask this question? How did the boutique pavilion go? Because it looked like it was much larger on the map than it had been the previous year.
So I didn't get a chance to go through the boutique pavilion. I was around the boutique pavilion. It seemed like they were not in a great location this year, and they were in a much better location last year because they were near Altadis and the PCA pavilion. But they were off in the corner this year, and it seemed like there was a lot less traffic. My big complaint on the boutique companies is that they don't promote what they're bringing to the table. Whether even if it's I'm not even concerned what's new. They don't promote what their product is about. They're more concerned about promoting the pavilion, and I think they do a good job of promoting the pavilion. But ultimately, I got to have a compelling reason to go into the pavilion and see a particular product. So, and I think that may be some of the problem they're hitting right now. It seemed like there was less traffic this year, but again, it could have been the time I was around there, so I don't want to judge it. But it seemed like last year they had a lot more activity in there.
Yeah, if I
Yeah,
can add something there,
please.
I didn't even go to the boutique pavilion last year, and this year I went to several booths. Um, so yeah, it was a little harder to find, but it was very easy to do business there. And I do also want to mention to Coop. Yeah, we picked up Som as well. We actually got that about a week before the show, and I think him and Eladio have done a good job with those cigars. I'm excited about that brand.
Yeah, I think from media perspective, going into the trade show, we knew the loss of the last day was going to have an impact on sort of what booths we could hit. And I think there is a limit. There's just a physical limitation, and 3 days of 8 hours, you can only hit so many booths, regardless of the number of people you have. And I think we've been bumping up against that limit for years now, and I think it's challenging. Sort of what to Coop's point, unless there's a very clearly communicated message about what product you're bringing, it's very, very difficult to. We're at a point where it's very difficult to fit a new company into that rotation when you already have
Yeah.
60 companies that are on your list to hit, and 40 of those are must have. Like I said, that day 3 becomes a real scramble to say, we're behind and we need to hit 15 companies today, and that might not be possible. So that's where that communication in advance, hopefully 2 weeks in advance, maybe not on the Thursday before the trade show, is really helpful for us to plan for that. Because unfortunately, we say this every year, we'd like to hit every booth, but it's not possible. So we unfortunately have to make hard decisions about who we're hitting and who we're not. And unfortunately, some fall by the wayside, and that's just the nature of the media game.
Yeah, so example, El Mago and Som, the two I'm giving, these are companies that reached out to us earlier, in the year. So we were able to get them on the radar. And the companies who the problem is we have like a ton of companies who communicate with us through, all year. And we feel an obligation. We at least owe to go see them. And there's a couple companies, maybe they didn't have something new, but you know what? They've been very supportive of us. We deserve at least to go to that booth and spend some time with them. So that's another challenge. And a lot of times, if a company, if they're just not if they're only communicating with us and sending me a text message, come to my booth today at a trade show, it's not that I don't want to. It's just now the hours are really, really condensed.
I
And
ran the same problem this year on my end. I didn't send a single press release out. I did
But you-
everything. So I did everything through social media.
but you still got the word out there. Everyone knew what you were gonna have. You did podcasts, you did social media. So it wasn't just the press releases. Like Sam was just communicating with me in general. Just kind of trying to get to know what we were about and stuff like that. And so that kind of helped us, is what I'm saying. I kind of been joking around with John and a few of the guys, Aaron. I see these things on Facebook. Come to booth number 5410. Okay, like why? Why am I? Yeah, I need a reason to come to the booth. What is? If I know the company, it's a different story. I've seen, but if I know nothing about your company, it's just hard because there's a lot of other companies that are getting the word out better.
Yeah, gone are the days that at the end of day one we can come by and spend a half an hour at your booth and learn about your company. If we have to make those hard decisions, and so
Yeah.
what helps us, like Coop was saying, is that if we have that information in advance, we can weigh that against the list of things that we have to accomplish.
I don't know if there's any other industries like there's like certain industry that I'm really interested in as a hobbyist, right? So I follow it, and they're preparing for their big trade show next week in Switzerland. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and the things that you're talking about on the media side is the exact same thing they experience. There's a ton of exhibitors that they'd love to visit, but hence they only have so much physical time.
Yeah.
Team can only be so big. So I
Yeah.
think these challenges aren't a cigar industry thing.
Yeah.
I think these are every industry issue for everybody in media and also as an exhibitor. It's a challenge, and you also got to understand that. Look, I mean, the position of being a big company is about sucking up as much shelf space as possible. Even if your cigars aren't that popular sometimes, or maybe not the most hot, just having extra spaces on a shelf when a consumer walks into the humidor, they're more like, if they don't know what they're going to pick and you have 10% more space, they're 10% more likely to grab one of your cigars. So just the way everything is set up when you're a bigger company is to try to encourage as much consumption of space and time, not just of dollars. And it's no different in our industry. That's the reason why I know retailers balk at it now, but there was a reason why there was a past where Altadis was a minimum of 80 facings, right? If you wanted to be an Altadis direct kind of account. Now I know these things have changed over time, but that's always been a strategy by the larger companies. I mean, it's just the way it is.
I mean,
Yeah.
we had to add in this year. We had Altadis, Drew Estate, and General. That was about 4 to 4.5 hours of time. People were saying, well, and I know that sometimes isn't the sexiest thing to go spend time with the big companies, but guess what? They're the top 3 companies in terms of traffic on Cigar-Coop.
Sell the most cigars.
And they generate the top 3 traffic on Cigar-Coop.
Yeah.
So with Davidoff 4, who wasn't there. So we have to spend time with them because that's what our audience is looking for in the end. Those are the companies they're looking for in the end. So
no, I
and
agree,
they're
Coop.
all sponsors. They're all sponsors of ours on top of that. But I'm just saying, even if they weren't, we have to spend that time.
Yeah, and I'll add also to what John said and you said is that half day that was big. There were 3 separate companies that we never got to their booth, and literally I bumped into somebody in the hallway and I'm like, "Here, write this down," and I placed orders. I would have liked more time, but even Altus was a busy booth, and not to complain. I wish actually they had more people because it was hard to.
They were definitely shorthanded, yeah.
But they're very busy. In fact, I wanted to go see Casada, and Altadis was taking a while, so I had to wait for Raphael. So I went over to Casada, got my order done. But yeah, there was a lot of that. I really missed that half day because I know with a couple companies like Aganorsa and Oscar, I ended up placing orders with the rep at the airport or in the just bumping into them, when we're walking down the hallways because there just wasn't enough time to visit everybody. And I'm not media, but I mean, I'm sure it's even exacerbated with you guys because you want to get the story and the intel behind all the cigars. So yeah, it was a very compressed show, no question.
And we also, one thing we did this year was different is we had a trip in Dennis, and we had some adjustments to go through with a bigger team, but we ended up splitting the crew probably the middle of the second day. So we were even doing double duty at that point in a lot of cases.
How do you handle this, Mike? I mean, you've got the double-edged sword. You're like trying to be an exhibitor and a retailer. I mean, how do you possibly squeeze all that in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strategy, man. Realistically, I'm there to try and meet as many retailers as possible, right? And just like Jay said, the reality is that when you do business with specific people, you can do business with them whether you're there on the showroom floor or you run into them somewhere else. So you kind of have your horses picked. It's not sadly to say, this is 15 years is retail for me. So I say that because I just can't believe it's been that much time already. So you kind of know where you're going to go. Like, you know, your big buys, they're already kind of done before you show up, right? Your Drew Estates, your Fuentes. If you're not done with your Fuente, you can handle your Fuente when you get back. You know, so realistically, that puts me at my mid-level boutiques that I need to really kind of solidify. So I got to see you. I need to see Foundation, you know, or I need to at least establish a game plan. But if I didn't see you, if I didn't make it there, I mean, obviously I wouldn't have had the opportunity to get the watch, but I still would have been able to probably partake in everything, right? So, like I just make sure that I try and cover what I can, but you know, you start with your primary, and your primary is meeting new retailers, continuing the relationship with the retailers that you have, and really kind of cultivating and establishing your brand. Everything
to speak on that. So Mike and Jay, you'll get an email from us reminding everybody that Friday's the deadline.
Right.
Right. So we send it out prior to the show. We send it out again, and right, like when the show is kind of happening, so they get it fresh in case they left it at home. And then we always kind of like wait till the week after the trade show, and we have a grace period because we understand that not everybody can make it everywhere. It's not physically possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like I'm mad at Saka that the bronze back was so good. I just emailed Cindy today asking for more bundles. Yeah, that's. I think it's really wise to have a little extra time because maybe we haven't had time to smoke that particular sample, and we realize, oh my God, this is really a banger. And that was an example of one that I thought it was going to be good, and then I smoked it, and I was like, holy moly! And that happens sometimes. You just don't have time to smoke it, and then you realize, oh, I should have gone a little deeper with that.
Doesn't hurt when you're smoking 30% humidity instead of 8% humidity, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I know Carney got on me about that, saying that humidity was 12%, but I checked it every day. It was 30, 35%, and the samples just tasted better.
No,
Yeah,
much.
the samples all tasted better this year. I agree.
And that was an unexpected surprise. I guess I should add something too, and I don't think I'm violating my NDA by saying this, is that the input from the manufacturers on the board was, yeah, April's nice, but the earlier the better, because the manufacturers are saying to us, hey, orders are really light in the first quarter, and if we can have trade shows in early March, we'd prefer that. And I was totally shocked with that feedback.
Crazy. You need better people on the board.
You know, and I you know, I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but you know,
we know who they are.
Yeah,
You're
Christian and Michael and Jared were all saying, hey, you know, we want earlier trade shows in the future. And I was just like, oh my God, I thought April was early. Nice. So that was interesting feedback, at least those three manufacturers gave.
Let me say this, in my perspective, if I could like just throw a dart on the wall and have my perfect date, it'd be like the first week of May. That'd be like the absolute ideal from my perspective. But again, that also has to do with just the factories. See, everybody has different problems, right? So I have a lot of tobacco issues in Q1 that I have to deal with, right? So that making the earlier March, you got to remember, we all have these obligations with these, Puro Sabor and the Dominican Cigar Festival, and every manufacturer at this point of any size has to do the Great Smoke. There's certain things that are like locked in this calendar that are just unmovable things, right? And you always like, I don't know. March, earlier in March would be really hard. But in the end, if we stay the same rough time every year, I can work with it because then I can plan around it. So in the end, whenever it is, wherever it is, I'm going to figure something out.
Yeah. An interesting feedback I got from Jared that I guess wouldn't apply to you or Mike is because he has in-house reps. The issue is about quarterly bonuses. If it's in March, it's in the first quarter. If it's in April, it's in the second quarter. And he talked a lot about, you know, financially as a company, you know, they want to try to help their guys get bonuses. So that's something I never thought of as a retailer, is that these companies who have in-house sales forces, that, you know, that's a big deal to them when they bonus their people when they don't. I would never even thought about that. So that's just
the other thing that you got to look at too is it doesn't matter when the trade show is. The month before always sucks sales wise. So it just double sucked this year with the trade show being where it is. So you have the Q1 dip, and then you have the pre-trade show dip. Because even like a company, like for us, example, we count all the orders in the month of the trade show. we count towards whatever we're going to do for the trade show. So that way, if somebody ordered from us on March 3rd, we counted that towards their ability to get in the watch raffle if they showed up at the trade show, right? Some companies don't do that. Some companies just do, hey, only the sales between day A and day B are the only ones that count for whatever the deal or the discount is. So I think it also has just how you operate as a company has an impact on that. But just as a general rule of thumb, the month before the trade show is always a bad sales month as a manufacturer, as a brand owner. It's always a difficult month. And that was true. Our worst month last year was June. And we all know June's a great month. But sales-wise, June is was our weakest month last year.
Last purchasing question, just before we move on, because I heard some retailers sort of, sidebar conversations, and they felt that they could do all their purchasing in 2 days. And that kind of surprised me because, first of all, that doesn't make sense to me, like just from a setting up your meeting appointment. But certainly to me, and Coop can probably echo this, is that day one kind of reminded me of the New York Stock Exchange, where it was just like, it was a mob going on the floor. And I was like, well, there's no way that all those people can possibly get through their appointments on day one, because it's a madhouse in here. Like,
But you have to
what do you guys?
Most retailers, they only have so much shelf space. So
True.
every retailer has to make the hard choice about what brands they're going to curate and what brands they're not going to curate. You can't, unlike you guys that want to cover as many things as possible to give your readers a wide exposure, retailers can't take that approach with their humidor. They have to make really hard decisions, not just because of the amount of cash they have, but also because of the amount of physical space they have. So you really have no retailer at the show, with the exception of your Cigars Internationals and your Smoke. And even a guy like Smoke Inn or Jeff at Corona, they have a lot of brands they do not bring in and they do not buy, right? So other than the super big boxy guys that try to have everything under the planet, everybody has a reduced list. You'd be lucky if most retailers are actually actively doing business with more than probably 50% of the companies at the trade show.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, 2 days is really rough. I've kind of gotten into a cycle with some companies where I'll see them every other trade show. But yeah, for me, I need 4 days. I don't know how people get it done, and I know people that came, they were there 1 day or they were there 2 days. God bless them. Maybe I talk more than they do, but I always have to get my core stuff, and then there's always new brands. Buying doesn't matter. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So I thought for sure Abe was going to be on here as well, and I figured between Abe and Steve, I wasn't being able to get a word in. So my wife and Mike Palmer actually got together, and they made sure that I had signs here in the middle. So I wanted to throw it in. But go ahead, Jay. Please finish. I didn't want to interrupt.
And this is probably going to piss some people off, but they're probably not watching. If you're a hobbyist, yeah, you can get everything done in 1 day. But if you're a grown-up cigar shop, 2 days is not enough. And even for brands, like there were certain brands like Oliva that maybe I didn't buy anything from them at the show, but I'm going to buy a ton from them over the year. I still needed to stop by that booth, talk with my rep, see what's coming. And they weren't really prepared to release anything quite yet, but there's things coming. So in my opinion, and that's all it is an opinion, everybody has one. If you're a real cigar shop and you have real tobacconists, there's no way in hell you can get everything done in 2 days, unless you're on steroids or you do that Michael Keaton movie where you clone yourself. I just don't see how it's possible, but that's just my opinion.
I just don't think that the buying is the primary reason to why we're going to PCA. Personally, like I said, like Saka's going to make I have a week, right? And your other guys, you're going to have that time. So, for me personally, here's what's important about PCA. For one, making face-to-face contact with specific retailers and, having the mentorship and the ability of like, I've had this experience. How do I help them level up? What are they doing wrong? Right. Or what are they doing right? Let's review. Let's make things better for you. Right. Having that camaraderie and building those things on one level so I can help someone get better. Right. And then the other aspect is talking to guys with Steve, talking with Skip, talking with Nick, talking with those, even Herklots, understand Espinoza, like having conversations with those guys who have had so much experience and so many different perspectives and learning from them so that I can level up. So like that for me is the biggest thing about PCA. The purchases are are gonna be, like the one thing you always hear from retailers, well, why would I go? I can just get the deals wherever. I'm like, you're kind of missing the point, right? The point is, how do you get better at what you're doing? And you need to talk with other retailers. You need to talk with guys who've had those experiences so that you can make more sales. You can make more money so that you can bring more people into this industry than love it the way that we do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Even though Abe was giving me a hard time in KMA this weekend, Abe's an example of somebody that if I can spend 10 minutes with Abe, or 10 minutes with Michael Herklotz, or 10 minutes with Craig Cass, or 10 minutes with Michael Frey, I learned so much from people like that it's invaluable. And I agree. Yes, purchasing is part of what you do, but it's not the main reason. We could buy everything at home, right? But it's the mentorship, it's the learning, it's just seeing how things can be done differently. I had another retailer who I'd never met before suggested a way that he was going to sell something. I was like, the light bulb went on. I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. That conversation would not have happened if I wasn't at PCA smoking a cigar at the Crystal Bar with the guy.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So the PCA had something called the Best of the Leaf Awards this year. Did anybody here attend that event? Okay, Jay.
I tapped in briefly.
All right. Can you give us a rundown on how it went?
I saw the top of for the Cigar Lounge, and it's well deserved. Cigars in the Air is a hell of a store.
I will say that I didn't have very high expectations, and I was impressed. Scott Regina did a good job as the MC, and it was kind of weird. Like the first third of the tables were all filled, and then the back there's probably 200 people standing. But what I liked about it was, although it was small, and that was the goal the first year, was that whenever they announced the winner, they had a really high production video with music. They probably violated some copyrights or something, where they highlighted the shops, and somebody apparently from PCA or somebody came in and did some really nice photo editing. And it was exciting. I would certainly like to see it expand to maybe include some cigar reps, maybe include, retailers that have been around for a long time who've had a huge impact. But what they had was short and concise. It was 45 minutes. It was well done. We had drink tickets, and the bar was very well stocked. Michael and Brendan, they donated some of the Suma cigars from Ferio Tego, which are awesome to smoke. So it was, it exceeded my expectations. And I think for a first time, it was good. And I think that it will be only better in the future.
All right. Let's get into some spectacles. So I think kind of a tradition now is having celebrities there at the trade show for various products and things like that. So what celebrities were there, or were there any products that were kind of spectacles built around at this year's trade show?
Yeah, so we saw, there was, I want to say there's about 5 that I could think of. Obviously Tyson. We didn't go to when Tyson was there, just because it was, we weren't going to get time. Guy Fieri was back. We did get time with Guy Fieri this year, which was great. Chaz Palminteri was back, so we got time with him.
2 days, right? I think he was there 2 days.
Chaz, 1.
Was it just 1? Okay.
Chaz was just 1, yeah. He was only there on Monday because he had something going on, like show-wise, over the weekend. So he was at Ron Harper, who played for the Chicago Bulls, was over at Luciano's booth. We got time with him. I heard John Sally was over at the Freud booth. I didn't get to see John Sally. And Ed Reed was kind of walking around, but I don't think Ed Reed's cigars were on display. I think he's just kind of always kind of hanging around the show. Mm-hmm. There was talking to Dennis Rodman's cigar, but that cigar wasn't at the show either. So it seems like that this is becoming more of a trending thing. I think every one of these celebrities is taking a different approach for how they're doing it. I think everyone's talked about the Guy thing. He's got his way of doing it. I think the Tyson thing is more of a licensing thing, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Good for Gurkha for taking it, advantage of that. That's a big name to have on a cigar. So, and David Ortiz had a cigar, but he wasn't there either. So it seems like this is becoming, I expected this after the success with Guy Fieri, we'd see more of these things happen. But not everyone is Guy Fieri. Not everyone has that personality to do what he's doing. So I think it's different with each one of these celebrities. I find it's just a different engagement model that you have with them. But I think it's good for the show. I think it's good for the show.
Is there value in and look, I'll let other people judge who's an A list and who's a B list and who's a C list and so on. But do you think there's really any value if they're not an A list celebrity?
I think it depends on the company. I think if you're a smaller company, you can maybe benefit from someone who's a B list. But I think if you're a bigger company, you got to have the A list guy in there.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Michael. Just quickly, we kind of had that conversation about A list, B list, C list, and there were some pretty strong conversations at the media compound. And the example I gave is that, imagine if Drew Estate had Hetfield at their booth. Imagine what a absolute shit show that would have been any of the days.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Hetfield certainly an A-list celebrity as far as music goes, but I suspect that if you went to most retailers, they would know who Metallica was. Probably they wouldn't necessarily know who Hetfield was. And I think when you talk about A-list celebrities, everyone knows who Mike Tyson is. Everyone knows who Guy Fieri is. Most people probably know Chaz Palminteri, and I think it falls off probably from there, depending on your kind of sports knowledge.
See, I think with a guy like Chaz Palminteri, I think it's also depending on what age you are.
Of course.
Right.
I remember, what was it? Unusual Suspects, right? Usual Suspects and Bronx Tale. So, I mean, I think if you ask somebody that was 34 who he is, I don't know that they'd be very quick to connect the name. I could be wrong. I'm not a pop culture guy, so maybe I'm disconnected on that.
I gotta be honest, Steve, when Guy Fieri came in, I didn't even understand the big deal about Guy Fieri. I just never watched Food Network or anything like that. So I didn't realize how big he was.
Television personalities.
Yeah, I just didn't realize how big he was.
Except for Coop. Yeah.
I mean, personally for me, look, A, B, C list, I think that more attention to this industry is better.
Yep, I agree.
Reality is that more exposure we can get, the more, more consumers that we can get, the less demonizing of cigars, the better off we're all gonna be. So, it's great to see the level of passion and involvement that Guy Fieri has in this industry. That's, look, we're at year 3 at this point. So that's fantastic. Seeing that he's
that's a long run for a celebrity in our business.
Yeah, he could have just
That's
checked.
crazy.
It is. He's done 3 trade shows too.
That's 20 years in regular time, if you do the math.
Yeah, and then even with the licensing agreement with Tyson, just to have him pop in,
Absolutely.
The exposure is still good. The exposure is still good. So, it'll help the brands to some degree. We'll see where it takes them in the future. Obviously, the more involvement, the more passion that they have, the better off this industry is going to be as a whole. So, A, B, C, I'll take it. If Swifty makes a cigar, it's a wrap for all of us, baby.
Yep.
Let's go. Taylor Swift, Maduros,
One of our, yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, more people I have other walks of life who know what I do, but they don't read Cigar-Coop every day. But the question I got the most was, what do you know about this Mike Tyson cigar?
Right.
That was so that's something that if it could bring in a potential new smoker, that's great.
Huge.
That's great. And look, I don't think the expectation with Gurkha is that Mike Tyson's going to do what Guy Fieri's doing. I just don't. I think they know that. But they're kind of working at a different angle, and good for them. I mean, good for them.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, we briefly tapped on this conversation together when we were talking, and the reality is that there aren't a lot of cigar consumers. Right. So what does that mean? That means that there's room for more cigar consumers, right? So
I agree.
Yeah.
I've had a couple opportunities over the last 3 years to do some of these things, and I've never done them because they just didn't feel like a good fit for our company.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, I'm not unwilling to do it. It has to be somebody that makes sense for us as a company culturally. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to feel like it's just forced.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, here's a name and therefore, you know what I mean? So
of course.
Yeah. So there was a name that I met that he was smoking the Wagashi. I wouldn't say he's A-list, but for me as a boxing fan, big deal.
That's really cool.
Zab Judah. I mean, Zab Judah, and Ronnie brought him over to me knowing I'm a boxing guy. I knew exactly who he was. And that was a big deal for me because as a boxing fan, but he was smoking the Wagashi actually, which was pretty cool when I saw him.
Yeah, well, and the reality is that if somebody approaches Steve, it's, you want that guy to be committed, right? So, you got to vet the hell out of him. What are you going to do? Or, like, look, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows on this aspect of the industry. Are you going to put in the work? You're going to show up? Are you going to, or are you just going to put your name on a cigar and then move along? Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day,
I met with somebody last year who I really liked a lot as a fan. And then when I met him in person, I realized what a total asshole he was. You know?
Yeah.
I was much happier being a fan and not actually having real interaction.
Yeah, never meet your heroes, right? That's what
Yeah,
they say.
I've actually, yeah. You want to be careful with that, yeah.
But to Michael's point about Taylor Swift, I think that's a good analogy. If you can get a Taylor Swift to the cigar industry and touch on that base of smokers who are completely disconnected from the industry as a whole, from social media, from everything, and tap, because there's an enormous segment of cigar smokers out there that don't even know they're cigar smokers, and if you can tap into that and bring them into the fold, that's wonderful.
So as someone that's been involved in a bunch of these things since, when I worked back at Altadis, through JR and whatnot, normally the way this works is in reverse. They actually reach out to you, because if you try to reach out to them, all they get is literally hundreds of people that are always reaching out to them. So you need to either have some sort of personal connection, interaction where you have some sort of separate relationship beforehand, or they have to be actively seeking someone to do this, because it's very hard for you to go out of your way to cold call somebody and say, hey, I really like to make a cigar. I know you smoke cigars. I'd love to make you a cigar. You know how many times they hear that? They hear that about everything, about booze, about, hey, I got this special dish towel. You know what I mean? It's never ending. So it's really kind of a weird way that a lot of times these things happen more out of happenstance or luck than actual some sort of proactive action by the manufacturer or the brand owner.
Right.
Were there any products that they had spectacles around them, like similar like the El Septimo stuff that they had done, like the ashtrays, and were there anything that was like kind of big?
I don't think we really saw this sort of. I think Legends set a bar for draining the trade show floor. I'd say there was a little bit around the Perdomo 60th sort of collab with both the 60th and the St. Dupont release. There was a little bit of that, but I would say it was a fraction of what we saw that the year the Legends came out, and the sort of trade show just drained in that direction. I don't think I saw anything like that. What do you think, Coop?
Well, in terms of, I agree with you on that part, but if you're looking at spectacle, like when El Septimo brought those ashtrays in, right? The one thing I think that was a little bit of a definite hook at a booth was the Game of Thrones exhibit at
that's pretty cool.
at St. Dupont. They had the Game of Thrones chair. They actually got that chair from the film studio.
Cool.
That was, I think, an actual thing they used on the set and everything. So that, I think, was the closest thing I saw to anything kind of like intangible at the trade show as far as that goes. But yeah, there wasn't a big.
How was the slot machine? I heard that was kind of cool.
Oh, that was Dion's.
Yeah,
Dion had a slot machine at his booth. And it was like a retro style slot machine that was restored and I guess branded as a Illusione. And he had retailers basically, you could play it, and if you hit you got a cigar, you got a box of cigars or something like that. Right. So yeah, that I didn't get a chance to hit the slot machine, but it was, I did see it.
See, I love the interactive things like that. I think that's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did anybody make their way through the Spirits Pavilion?
Did my best to hit it as often and as repeated as possible. I sort of, for my designated 2 bathroom breaks that I was allowed for a 9-hour period, I sort of tried to either hit it on the way to the washroom or on the way back from the washroom. I can't specifically say how well attended it was, but listen,
it was very small. It was very
small, but
yeah,
it's free booze, and it's an audience that kind of gravitates towards that. And the products that were on display were, if you like rum, you certainly probably have heard of Flor de Caña, and if they're pouring an 18-year-old Flor de Caña or a 25-year-old Flor de Caña, you're probably not going to say no. So I think that was fairly well received.
Yeah, and I think they purposely started small with that too, because there's logistical issues bringing booze into the convention center and stuff like that.
Yeah. So how many brands did they have in there?
3.
There's 3,
3?
yeah.
Okay.
But I think it gives some credit back to the PCA. I think that's something that absolutely makes sense in this industry.
Yeah.
Is you have so much cross promotion for shops that are licensed. So there is certainly I think a big void there where if you can build on that and bring some spirits, I don't know how that's going to work with distribution, but at least if they haven't gotten exposure to the product, that's a no-brainer in my mind. Like if you can have some single malt exhibitors there, I mean, it's absolutely 100% cross. So it makes a lot more sense than a vape company or a massage company for sure. It's just yeah.
I think they could build on that. I think I know Scott's been wanting to do that for a while, and this was the first year they did it, and I think they're on the right track with that.
All right, John, tell us about badges. What was going on with badges?
Oh boy. I mean, listen, we know that there's been nonsense with badges going back forever. I know it irks Coop in a very personal way. It's one of those things you're never going to get rid of. It's whack-a-mole, right? It's whack-a-mole. So the most you can do is you can identify it and you can report it, or you can comment on it. You can bring it to the attention of the PCA. I don't think it's anything you're ever going to get rid of. I will say this year, possibly more than any year, there was definitely some eyebrow raises with a few badge situations where, and the two that sort of come to mind are, we saw an example of 5 duplicate badges. So I'm not sure how that gets counted in sort of the badge summary, whether they're counted as one person or 5 individuals, but it was 5 individuals with the same badge. So the same person, the same name, which obviously wasn't the same person because we haven't perfected cloning technology yet. And then the other one, which really stood out, and unfortunately we couldn't get a picture, but there was certainly a significant number of badges that seemed to be intentionally flipped over to sort of obfuscate who they were. And Cooper, you can probably speak to that because you certainly saw a lot of that too.
I saw a lot of that, and it hit there was one booth we hit on day 3, and that's when I kind of lost my marbles a little because we were on this tight schedule. We were being delayed by someone who's on with an invalid badge, and the person talking to them has, no knowledge. We're not gonna make a scene in front of that person. It's not our job to enforce the badges. But I knew this person was not a media person and was doing stuff. So you're right. We're never gonna solve the problem as long as there's an excessive amount of badges being given out. But it's still. I think the PCA has tried to fix this problem. I think the PCA has tried to
fix to it because look, a lot of the retailers, they kind of reward some of their best customers bringing them to the trade show.
But they're not taking time up as much.
Those customers are some of their biggest whales, and also those customers, sometimes they're the ones that are the champions for the brands in the shop. So if they get exposed to the manufacturers and they get the story, they tell the story. So I don't look at this as the PCA's thing. I think that we're all adults enough as manufacturers and exhibitors to say, hey, dude, I don't have time to talk to you. You know what I mean? You can tell people, no, I do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the other...
We can all be old enough to know who to talk to, who not to talk to, who you want to talk to, who you don't want to talk to. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as the thing that drives manufacturers crazy are the people that don't exhibit, but they're using the aisles as their way to hide their goods while they're walking around.
I think a couple of those.
I think we see less of it and less of it because I don't think it's a very effective way to work the trade show. To be honest with you, I don't think any of the fish you're going to land are not fish that are worth actually putting in the boat, in my opinion. So I don't think it's a good strategy. So I don't really worry much about them. But I don't know.
We were told explicitly by a couple of media people they were on the trade show Friday. And that's the thing that the PCA has always been steadfast on is media can't be on the trade show Friday. But what you could do is the way you get around it is you get a manufacturer badge, and now you're able to do that.
And let me be honest with you. If you guys said you wanted a badge, if it's somebody that I trust and I know they're going to be responsible, I probably would give you a badge. I probably would.
And I understand that. I
At the
understand
same
that.
time,
We,
every year we get requested for 20 badges that we say, sorry, we don't have a badge for you. You know
Right.
what I mean? We used
Yeah.
all our badges. So part of it, I think, is also just being an adult about it too. You know
But-
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. The PCA has taken some steps with this one. I do believe they've taken some steps. I knew it wasn't going to be solved this year either. So I want to be fair to them. I think I basically said to them last year, I said, well, why don't I just go get manufacturer badges for my whole team and be done with it, right? I don't have to pay for them. I could get more access, right? And when I said that, I think it kind of turned a few heads saying, well, he's right, why wouldn't, why am I going down? So they changed the media badges this year. And they made it easier for media people, particularly the small guys. The small guys don't have to pay to get in with a media badge. The larger teams like myself, and I understand that we do have to pay for the additional badges. I don't have a problem with that part either. But they did make it easier for these, like a lot of these guys to get in now with a media badge. All they have to show is their credentials.
As long as they
Can
get
I-
legitimacy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question to the media people? I have been frustrated in the past and stopped from doing business a lot of times from people I would describe as fake media. I didn't see as much of it this year. Did you see as much as usual, or was
It
it
was less.
down?
It was less. It was
There's
definitely less.
there was definitely less. There's definitely less, but I would say that it certainly wasn't eliminated, and I think we saw two instances where it was sort of blatant teams of two or three people with manufacturer badges coming through sort of behind us, and it didn't cause an issue for us. But I commented to Coop, I'm like, this is a circumstance in which obviously we always strive if there's and we actually had it on day 3 where we had to step back from doing booth coverage because a retailer came in and it was kind of the closing hours of the trade show. And so we had to step back and basically lose coverage to make sure we weren't preventing an interaction with a retailer. But I said to Coop, like, if we run into this situation and we're up against someone who's clearly media with an exhibitor badge, we won't be acquiescing to that. Like, we actually will be standing firm to say, like, sorry,
Right.
you have an exhibitor badge, you don't have a media badge. We've got position here, and unfortunately,
But in the end, the manufacturer's going to decide who they want to talk to and who they don't want.
for sure.
You can't force that.
In the end, no.
And maybe I'm in a bubble, but it seemed to me that there was a heck of a lot of the cleavage girls at this trade show working the booths than there have been in the past. There are a lot less of the Instagram model types.
Oh, no question. Yeah.
I mean, that seemed to be much lower than I've ever remembered. Now, maybe it's just because I've scared them away. I don't know, but
They weren't on the media.
I did not see as much of that as I have in the past.
No, like I mean, I personally went through the media list, right? Because I wanted to reach out to media members that I didn't know, and I wanted to set appointments. And the first thing that I do is say, okay, I want to try my best to vet everybody that's on this list before I send out an email blast, because I don't want to find myself in some time suck with some bitch that's insignificant that doesn't give a fuck about the industry,
Right.
And then and I even had a plan too that, look, if I find myself in this situation, somebody's taking the bullet. Somebody else is doing the interview. Here you go.
So like the way I deal with this, Mike, is so I have a media list, obviously, right?
Right.
But we basically send out, like, we have a VIP level media list. It's just the way MailChimp calls it, VIP, but we have it segmented. And basically we send out the appointments to the people that are in the top segment first. And then if all the appointments don't get filled, then we go to the second segment. And we've never made it to the third segment. In fact, we didn't even make it out of the first segment this year. But then there's always like 2 or 3 media people that go out of their way and say, hey, do you have time for an appointment? And if they reach out to us like that, then I always leave a few slots open,
Right.
okay, to handle that kind of overflow. So, I mean, a lot of it gets, I think it also just, I think it just depends on how you manage it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're just standing there waiting for media to show up willy-nilly, that's a problem.
Right.
Because you're going to be occupied with somebody when they show, and then they're going to have to go somewhere else. And it becomes really difficult to do that. It's not good for their time, and it's not good for your time. So trying to coordinate all that in advance makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And that's the downfall for these guys that are trying to slide in under manufacturer badges, because I don't have their information. if you're, like we know who the top tier guys are in this media industry. If you're looking to try and establish and build your brand, then you have to come in under a media badge. If not, we have no idea you're there. So if you're going to slide into the booth and we've already set these appointments, then you're screwed anyways, right? So.
And just to sort of put a cherry on that, it is much improved. I'd say year over year, significantly improved. And on top of that, I think we saw the return of quite a number of media members who had not shown up in at least 2 trade shows, which is, I look at that as a positive thing. And they were attending with media badges. So, to me, that checks every positive box in my mind and certainly moves us in the right direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So after hours activities, I think this is one of the big topics I think that people were talking about before the trade show in regards to not being, at the Sands again and not having a central spot for everybody to get together. What was the after hours like? People kind of scattered around. Do they all still find each other? How did that kind of go?
Jake?
I'm the wrong guy.
I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Well,
I was
those nights I was so exhausted.
no. Go ahead, Coop. Go ahead, because you've got a good perspective on this.
Yeah, I think there was a place, and I think it turned out to be this place called the Crystal Bar in Resorts World.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was this. This is where this is maybe one thing I can critique the PCA on. So, leading up to the PCA was promoting we have all these places you could smoke at Resorts World, Gatsby's, I forget
8 Lounge.
8 Lounge, right? And a lot of them had minimum. You had to basically if you wanted a table, you had to pay a minimum. And I understand that. That's Vegas. That's not an issue. But I think the one thing that everyone was concerned about with the move to the convention center is there wasn't a Bar Luca. And I think it really turned out that Crystal Bar was that. Because I knew people who were staying at Westgate and stuff saying, I wish I knew about this Crystal Bar thing, that there was this central place. And it was actually, everyone was saying, Jay, you could probably add more to it because you were there. It was a better location than Bar Luca. And it was much more friendly and it was larger and it turned. So
better service.
I don't know why. I think I understand why the PCA didn't promote it. I think probably they needed to promote those other lounges as part of the deal. But I still would have mentioned the fact that there was a place that you could congregate and smoke. Yeah. We didn't go to it. We had the compound, but here's what I noticed. When people found out about the Crystal Lounge, we started getting a lot less people wanting to come over the house. So, which I was actually not upset about either. So,
the Crystal Lounge was very spacious, and then there was a bar behind it where you could get coffee, and then there were a lot of areas in Gatsby you didn't have to pay. The biggest challenge at Crystal Bar, which I know it drove my brother nuts, is that they might have 1 or 2 waitresses, and they were very overworked. But I will say this: everyone at the Crystal Bar was super friendly. If you had to, you just went up and order from the bartender. It was light years better than Bar Luca.
That's what I heard.
But yeah, we as the organization, we didn't talk about it. I'm not sure why, but it was a great place to hang and smoke for hours, and there were no minimums of any kind.
Yeah.
And if you want to go for the other lounges, you had that option too. I mean, that's what was, I think it was the best there of both worlds.
Yeah, I drink Pellegrino, and they ran out of Pellegrino on Saturday night, and they're like, "Oh, do you want club soda?" And it was free. I mean, they were not in a money-making mode, though they made good money. It was such a positive experience that there was really no place to go anywhere else. But like you said, Coop, the PCA did not talk about it. I'm not sure why. It may have been a contractual thing that they had to push those ones. I'm not involved in the weeds on the contracts.
Yeah.
I mean,
there was one thing. Go ahead, Leon. You go ahead, because mine's off topic with this. So go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things, because Aaron, you weren't there, but we've talked in years gone by about the shift of the hours from 10 to ending at 5 instead of 6, and so it was
10 to 5 and 10 to 6.
Right, 10 to 5 instead of 10 to 6, and we knew that was going to impact evening activities. That's just sort of the nature of the beast. I don't know what was going on this year, and everyone can kind of chime in. I was so exhausted, even on day one. I was the most exhausted I've ever been at a trade show, and it doesn't compute for me because I was going to bed earlier than I've ever gone to bed. I checked my step counter and I was weirdly way below, so much so that I had to double check with other people's step counters to say, like, is my step counter broken? Because it's 30% lower than it should be. So
This
like,
is easy, John. I can answer this because I'm the one with
Yeah.
the most experience at this. You're getting older.
Yeah.
'Cause back when I was your age, I would be out till 4 a.m. every trade show
Yeah.
to show back up on the show floor at 8, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And now I literally drag myself to eat bad room service to go to bed at 9:30. I mean, I went nowhere any night. I canceled every dinner reservation that I had booked. I mean, I don't have the energy to do it. So look, I think that's the thing that people, they don't realize how exhausting the trade show really is when you're working the trade show. You know, it's really tough. I mean, for me, the best nights of the trade show are like the 2 nights, the Thursday and Friday before the trade show opens.
Yeah.
Because I still got a little bit of juice in the tank. But man, once that thing starts, man, it's hard.
yeah, I think the nature of and this will probably change in New Orleans, but the nature of Vegas, unfortunately, is that, you know, dinners are typically starting at 7:30, and you're not having a 2-hour dinner. You're having a 4-hour dinner. And I love 4-hour dinners, but I can't do 4-hour dinners every night. And so, you know, the nights where, you know, we could carve out and have the boys from Powstanie over and have Jay over, to me, that is what makes the trade show. You know, not that I don't and am not appreciative of the dinners, because I very much am, but I do miss a little bit the evening sort of.
Go to a media dinner with JC Newman. Didn't they have a special media dinner for you guys?
They did.
Yeah, they did a
They
nice
did.
job. They did a nice
It was,
job.
yeah,
They
it's
did.
great. And
Yeah.
so that kind of
For me, that was one of the best finds of this trade show was the patio at Breza's, right?
Right.
So if you're going to Vegas and you smoke cigars, right next door to Heart 8, where you have a beautiful patio behind, well, they have an equally beautiful patio. Maybe the furniture isn't quite as nice, but there's plenty of seating. You eat at Breza's and then you go out on the patio and enjoy a cigar after your meal. That's a really nice Vegas find.
Yeah. And we used to be able to double stack that. You know, for years we were able to sort of do either a sort of cocktail and then dinner, and then we'd still have, you know, call it an hour and a half at the house. Unfortunately, you know, the way the timing works now is you really kind of either have to say we're doing the cocktail thing and then we're getting, you know, pizza or takeout or in and out or whatever at the house. And that's it.
Again,
And that's unfortunate.
reducing
But
to 3 days adds an extra hour on the schedule in the trade show. An hour doesn't seem like a big deal, but one more hour every day is a big deal. It really
Yeah,
is.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean, personally, like Jay, you're right about Crystal Bar. I think that it was amazing. What's one of the best benefits about Resort World is all that access to smoking areas. You know, whenever you go to the Venetian, the Palazzo, you go to Bar Luca, you are at the entrance level of the elevators for everybody else to get into their hotel rooms. And the reality is that none of them like us there. So you can just, I mean, I got a kick out of just sitting there and just watching everybody be pissed off about how much cigar. But the reality with the Crystal Bar is that it's kind of back a little bit. It's not for that. It's not at that entrance. So, you know, everybody was comfortable. You know, I also, you know, at come 11:30, 12 o'clock, you know, my glass slippers change and I'm going to bed as well. But you could see that everybody was there. Everybody was having a good time. Nobody was stressed out. There was enough space where you can make these little groups of people kind of talking. You could bounce around if you wanted to. So I think that, you know, as far as after hours, Resorts World is definitely the best as far as experience through PCA.
I actually like the whole layout of Resorts World. I like the fact that you don't have to cut through the casino to go to your hotel.
Yeah.
Basically go from the lobby to your elevator. That saves a lot. I like the fact that Resorts World had a few restaurants that were, I don't know if they were 24-hour, but they were still open really late at night. And if you wanted something to nosh on, you could get something to nosh on. They were a very accommodating hotel. I got to give them credit.
Yeah.
The only complaint I heard, and it wasn't a huge complaint, I guess, and this, I don't think this is even PCA. This is not PCA's fault, but it probably should have still been communicated. The Tesla shuttle was shut on Friday.
Yeah.
That was
was a
the only thing I heard, and I was surprised. I mean, it's funny. I had it in my pregame report that it was being shut.
So
I'm
thought
surprised
that was
PCA didn't know that
communicated
either.
for the
Yeah.
Friday. I thought that I thought that was communicated. But you know,
I was
I
the
may have
down.
missed then if I did, I missed the communication as well. So
I was super excited. Like, everybody went ahead of me that on Friday. I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Like, cause I like to go to the gym, kind of clear my head or whatever. And I'll meet you there. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do the tunnel. This is going to be amazing. I go down. I'm like, there's nobody here. This is going to be awesome. And I'm like, oh shit. There's nobody
It's
here.
clo-
'Cause it's closed.
we had a great location at the convention center too. We were in that central hall. The parking was great. It was a great. I mean, to get that central hall, I think was
That's
key.
one of the best parts about the convention center versus the Sands as an exhibitor too, is you have the ability to drive and transfer stuff over easily.
Much
Where with the
easier.
Sands, you gotta wheel everything to the hallways. So it's actually, there's a lot of benefits to the convention center versus being in the Venetian, just as there's disadvantages too. So
No,
Yes.
I agree. I could walk every day, and the best part of walking was Bagel Mania was about halfway there. And they
Bagel
had great
Mania,
food.
baby.
Bagel. We were there every day.
Yeah.
We dumped a lot of money at Bagel Mania. I can tell you that.
I'd still pick the Sands. The Sands, I think it's a better expo center. And I did, I liked just being able to walk down and go.
I
If
would
you
say the Sands, the quality of the restaurants over there at the Venetian is a cut above what there is at Resort World. Breza was a standout. There were
Yeah.
a couple of places, but overall, the food options at the Venetian Palazzo is a better food option.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and like if you drove from Resorts World to the convention, oh my God, it's like so aggravating. Like the traffic lights for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It every day. So
Going
for
to
me,
Resorts World with a car. I mean, when we went the one night I just said we're valeting it, guys, because
Yeah,
that
that was
parking
painful.
garage is over in
the other
Utah.
thing that was really
basically.
surprising to me was valet fees. I went to dinner one night at Caesars, and it was $57 to valet park your car.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, even at the Venetian, the free parking's gone. That was a big. Now it's
Oh,
paid
really?
parking at the Venetian. Yeah, that was a
Right.
big. That was a
Whoa.
surprise when we got there. Yeah, it was
Yeah, the
$23 to park there.
But I think there was somebody who was a guest at the media house was saying there was a March Madness tax. I think that was being applied that weekend as well. So I think some
Probably
items
so.
there's an
Look,
hidden surcharge.
The valet at Resorts World, I think, was 37 a day or 39 a day. So there was no cheap valet this weekend in Vegas. There was no doubt about that.
Yeah, I didn't see March Madness crowds, to be honest with you. It didn't seem any more crowded, these places.
Because you weren't in the sports book.
Well, okay, yeah, but I was
in the
hearing
wrong
there was going to be no
place.
place to smoke. People going to be watching.
Restaurant reservations would be complicated, and the restaurants weren't
Restaurants
any
were not
busier than
complicated.
normal.
They were not it was normal Vegas, is what I'll say. Like,
I am going to throw a hot take out there. We went to Breza's, my brother and I. We got a Wagyu tomahawk, and it was better than Saga. And Saga's fantastic.
wow,
It
that's a big statement, Jay.
I mean, I just ate it at Saga a month ago. It was worth all $235.
You better
I-
check your phone from a message from Fred Rui because
Yeah.
he's
Fred
gonna.
Rui.
No, I
yeah.
mean it was awesome. It wasn't on the salt thing that kept it warm, but I have never had, other than one time at a really high-end restaurant with Chateaubriand, I don't think I've ever had a better cut of meat. It was phenomenal.
Breza's is a fantastic restaurant. It's one of the best in Vegas.
Yeah, and their octopus was unbelievable, and
Oh, they have
their
great
oysters were
octopus.
unbelievable.
Yeah, Newman
Wow.
put a nice. They put a nice
These
hour
cheap
together. for us.
raviolis, unreal.
Oh yeah. I ate at Carver. I got one dinner I got invited to, and Carver was good. And they had these, I know Coop wouldn't say they're official cheesesteaks, but they were phenomenal. But the food at Breza's was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the service was great.
All right. Anything else about the 2024 trade show that we did not talk about that we want to talk about before we talk about next year's show?
Mm.
All right. So 2025.
Nothing that
Second-
you can talk about.
We'll talk about it in the green room.
Yeah.
No, I do have one comment I want
Okay.
to make because he's not on here. It made me sad as a board member that Ben Lee said that he felt like he had never been so disrespected as a media member, and that hurt my heart because Ben's such a great guy.
Dude,
But,
you can-
Jay, it was legit. I mean, look, I understand that comment. That was bad what happened this year. So I'm
Yeah,
just gonna.
and Ben's not the kind of guy to complain. I felt bad about that. So I hope the media thing is fixed for next year.
I
really
hope
do.
it's fit. I say they've done a good job with media, and I'm hoping that this is just something that could be easily corrected.
Yeah,
I-
my comment, Jay, was you should be thankful that Aaron Loomis wasn't at the show this year because you had to deal with the Canadian. If you think the Canadian went nuclear, you should have been there. If Aaron would have been there, there would have been police called. So it would have
Yeah, he
gone to
would
a
have been
whole
arrested.
different level.
Dude, you could see it on his face in the media house. I'm like, Ben, what's wrong with you, dude? What is it, man? Are you okay? Like, can I help you? Like, I felt bad for the. I didn't know
Well,
exactly that it was based.
I think there's more to what Ben's comment, and I think we should just leave that on the table right now. I think there was more than just the access. So, with that,
On a positive note, there were some really good cigars. Obviously we've mentioned Steve's and Mike's cigars. I thought the La Flor de Vinicana 30th anniversary was an exceptional cigar. And like I repeat, General outdid themselves. I think it's the best show General's had in a decade as far as quality products. Justin and his team, we love to give them a hard time, but they did a good job.
they did. They
So
had a
there
good show.
One brand that you were talking about on a previous show, Coop, that you were hoping that they delivered, La Aurora. How do you feel that they did at this show?
I think they took some steps forward this year. They were a lot better organized this year. I think there was just this is what because we were there and it was crowded and they seemed well organized just from a media and a retail standpoint on day one. So I kind of think they came out with some products this year, some value products. They had some higher end products. So I think they took a step in the right direction. And the thing I noticed is they were connecting better with retailers at that booth. When Bear was doing the interview, I was observing things very carefully, and it seemed like they took a step in the right direction.
All right.
Yeah, so I can't again. Other people may have a different experience, but I gotta say I thought they did what they needed to do this year. It wasn't gonna be solved in 1 year. They have a lot of work to do, but I think they definitely took a step in the right direction.
All right, Aaron, go ahead. Moving on.
All right. So 2025, we got New Orleans, second week of April. What are your guys' outlook on that? I know Steve said he likes the date further back, so that seems to be good timing. What are your guys' thoughts? That give you enough breathing room in Q1, and then New Orleans as the location.
Better time of the year. The PCA is gonna have to sell New Orleans as a experience. That's the challenge they'll have. I think this staff is a much better staff than we had the last time the show was in New Orleans. So I have some confidence that they're going to do some of the right things. But New Orleans is going to be a tougher sell, in my opinion. I think everyone talked about TPE, having a slow show this year, but you may see a lot of people go back to TPE because they want to go back to Vegas. So I think they got to sell New Orleans. They got to sell it to the industry that this is a great place to have a trade show. I think they can do it, but they got to take those steps.
I don't know if that's true because I think so many manufacturers have such a subpar experience at TPE. I think there'll be even less manufacturers going to TPE next year. So if people are going to TPE, they're going because they want to go to Vegas, not because of the.
I think I was talking more from the retailer standpoint, but I think you're right. But from what I understand, it's a lot less expensive to exhibit at TPE, and somebody can still do it.
It's not necessarily less expensive. The cost of the convention center and everything's the same. The difference is it's just your booth is much scaled down. You're taking far less people because there's just far less people you have to cater to. But I mean, if you did TPE at the same scale that we do PCA, I don't think there would be really a cost delta at all. It's not like the space gets cheaper. It's pretty much the same, really.
Yeah. I mean, from a retailer's perspective, at this point, it could be in Alaska. I hate Vegas. I'm over it. Please, for the love of God, I can't stand it. As far as what would be a great benefit, like I would love like a parlay where I could have my family come in at the tail end and then we could turn it into a vacation. So,
That's my plan.
Tampa, I'm for it. South Florida.
I'll tell you what, the one thing I'd love to see the PCA do, and I've recommended this for like a few years in a row, is I really like to see if they could just find one common space where everybody could go hang out at night. Even if that's an old warehouse building, you know what I mean? Because the thing, like we had trouble this year, you eventually landed on the Crystal Bar, right? But you were lucky to land on that. the challenge in New Orleans is there is no place to smoke in New Orleans. There just isn't. So if there was some way they could come up with something, even if it was tents in a field at this street address, you know what I mean? That people knew they could go there. I think that would go a long way to making the show feel a little bit more communal.
I heard a rumor, and it's only a rumor, and Jay could probably answer this better than anybody else, that they were planning on merging some type of canopies or something between two hotels in the street or whatever to be an actual hangout. I don't know how accurate that is or not. But
But
Jay's not here.
something like that in New Orleans in particular
Yeah.
is really needed because there really is no place to hang and smoke cigars. Plenty of places
Yeah.
get great food in New Orleans. We all know that. Great food city. Plenty of places to see interesting stuff at night if you want to see interesting stuff. Great music, but there is no place where we can collectively go as
Yeah.
an
Jay, I heard a rumor that they were working on something between two hotels where there would be like an actual overhang per se that they were going to construct for people to hang out at New Orleans. Is there any validity to that rumor or?
Could be. The things I've heard is that they've worked out something with the city of New Orleans to block off a couple city blocks where people can all smoke together, and there will be some sort of bar service. I've also heard that they're looking at getting the entire Sugar Mill restaurant. So they are working on that. I don't have all the details. My biggest worry about New Orleans is I want to drive, but I'm afraid my car will get stolen. And the streets smell like urine.
Well,
yeah,
also in April.
anything but Vegas right now. I'm so over Vegas. It's been 9 years or whatever.
absolutely. I mean, look, I went to Starbucks and they don't allow people inside by Vegas. I'm like, why isn't anybody allowed inside? Like, oh, well, there's kind of a problem. We don't let people in here because of all the issues. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I think that problem's kind of apparent wherever you go, and that's what insurance is for if they steal a car. So, I hope that there's some place where we can all congregate, like Saka was saying, for sure. But at the end of the day, man, just bring it to the ocean, bring it to the beach or something, so I can bring my family.
Yeah.
One quick question or comment here for you guys as exhibitors. Is there any concern? Because, unfortunately that week also happens to fall on Passover. So is there any expectation that Jewish shop owners just simply aren't going to show up for New Orleans because they're not gonna?
Yeah, but it's the same issue that we have. I mean, you always run into this problem in Dortmund every year. It overlaps a particular holiday. So, I mean, look, there's no place on the schedule that's ever perfect for everybody, right? I'm really glad we got rid of this whole July 4th thing. The July 4th thing was really, really tough.
Yeah, I needed to
One of
die.
the things as manufacturers, it makes the shipping to the trade show almost impossible that the weekend before the trade show is the July 4th weekend. It makes the coordination of sending everything really hard and really expensive. So you're always going to run into things, but I mean, we'll deal with it. And I think in the end, the people that come to the trade show come to the trade show because they understand the importance of being active in the industry and interacting with everybody and the camaraderie. And I think that honestly, the drop off would be, I think if you held it in Topeka, Kansas, I think we would have nearly 90% of the same numbers. And honestly, it would be the 90% of the people that count anyways, because you go to the trade show it's nice if you can tack on a vacation. It's nice if it doesn't overlap on something, but in the end, the people that are committed, they're committed, they're part of the industry. So I don't know that it is critical. So I'm happy we're going to a different city. I hope we're there for a couple years because of just the logistics and the expense of moving stuff around. It's going to be there's a little bit of a learning curve. Look, in some ways, the TPE experience made doing the PCA at the convention center easier because we had already dealt with the convention service people there, right? It's easier when you deal with people that you know. And because every convention hall you go into, they all have their own little idiosyncrasies. Okay, I can tell you my last experience in New Orleans, you have to have some tip money in your pocket to get the union workers to do what they're supposed to do. Now, I don't know that that's going to be true this time, okay? But that was a critical element of being an exhibitor successfully in New Orleans, was to have about an extra K in cash to get things done that were supposed to be done. You know, we'll see how it is this time.
And that was
You
Drew
know?
Estate, right? 2015.
Yeah, it was Drew Estate. Well, actually, that was me at Dunbarton, but I had already been there before as Drew Estate too. So when I'd been there, I mean, we did the trade show in New Orleans, what, 2 times,
2015,
Jay?
Yeah.
2 or 3 times. I lose tracks
Yeah.
in Cincinnati. They're so stacked on top of one another. I mean, but I'm with you, Mike. I've been going to Vegas now for almost 3 decades. I've had my Vegas experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so we've been talking about some kind of nice to haves. Are there any must haves that need to be changed, like for this upcoming trade show that you say, like, they really can't ignore this anymore or anything like that? Any of those exist at all?
As an exhibitor, one thing I really would love the PCA to do is for them to better organize all of the portals and all the passwords and all the things that we have to do as exhibitors to booth all the services that we need.
Mhm.
The PCA website is a piece of crap. It's terribly disorganized. It's very confusing, and it doesn't ever seem to get better. And that's something that I really wish, and I would hope that, I know you have a couple manufacturers on the board. I would really love if they would have to actually use these online tools. I wish somebody would do a little beta testing on how this works, because it's just causes a lot of confusions and a lot of problems.
Well-
Like, for example, like the fact that we had to be moved out by the noon on the next day was one little message on the top of one little page that you didn't absolutely have to click. It's just very disorganized. It just needs to be a better flow on the way they do that. And I don't know why it's the way it is. You would think after all these years it would get more organized, but that was one of the advantages of TPE. TPE was a much simpler show to book. Much simpler show to get your electric, much simpler show to get your carpet, much simpler show to get your catering, much simpler show to get your badges. Just all those things that as exhibitors that you have to do was laid out, one nice page, nice little checklist. Every single one had a link directly on one place. There was no, even if it had to take you to another portal, because all these services have their own portal, there was at least one common place that you could go and just systematically A, B, C, D, and E. I would love to see an idiot-proof system for that, to just make it easier on old dudes like me that are so technologically challenged.
Yeah. I mean, we struggled as far as booking our rooms. You know, that was a big issue going through the PCA portal. We couldn't get it. We were on the phone for, numerous times.
We struggled with the same thing. In fact, I don't know that I'm going to book my rooms next year through the PCA portal, which is bad because it earns you points and it also helps the PCA. But if it's so difficult to do it, okay, I'll just go to the website for the hotel and book a hotel room, even if it costs me $25 more a day.
Right.
Yeah,
Any other-
the
Go ahead.
PCA
That's all
website
back-end.
is, yeah, the PCA website's not great. I know that there's a major overhaul coming. I don't know if it's going to include the things you're talking about, Steve. But yeah, just me signing up as a retailer was frustrating the last couple of years. So hopefully it'll be better next year. I
Just
just
needs a
honestly
better
don't know.
user interface. It doesn't have to be prettier. It just has to be more functional. You know what I mean? More concentration on the functionality of it and the flow of it is really the part that would really make things a lot easier.
Yeah. And dude, I got to be honest with you, Jay. Kudos to you for taking on the board and working with them and the transparency.
Absolute
Because
misery job. Look at the abuse to get.
Yep.
yeah, like I have never had more correspondence with somebody from the PCA than I've had with you. And every time that we talk about something, you know what's going. You're not like, oh, I have no idea. So you're very involved and you're doing a lot of hard work. You're doing, and I'm sure it's a thankless job on so many different avenues. So I really do appreciate all the efforts and everything that you're doing, dude, for sure. And it doesn't go unnoticed. I just want you to know that I really do appreciate that for sure.
Well, thank you. And I think that a lot of the new members on the board have added some vitality, and the board is really starting to work together now in a very positive way. And compared to my first board meeting 4 years ago, we have definitely come a long way. But we still need to improve and upgrade. There's things that we still need to do to get into the 21st century. And obviously, it shouldn't be that difficult for you to book your rooms. That's crazy.
Absolutely.
I even found badge registrations difficult. We actually gave up on the badge registration system and we ended up just sending a spreadsheet in. Okay, because we couldn't get it to work, no matter how many ways we tried. I mean,
Yeah, my formula, which isn't very good, is if I can't figure it out in 20 seconds, I call Lisa Sigler and she takes
that's the
care of
problem, that we're all
That-
banging on Lisa and you know what I mean, Lisa Cox or Lisa Sigler, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just, it shouldn't be that way. It could be a lot easier. It really
it.
could.
I 100% agree.
Because that just causes more work for them, which means they can't focus on other things if you're just trying to take care of this nonsense. Again, something that I don't know you guys see in the media. You don't see any of that stuff, right? Because you don't have to book all the
No, we-
exhibit services.
had-
and all that stuff.
We had
Any
our
of that with
issues.
the badges.
We had our own issues with
We had our own issues with
registration.
that. Yeah.
I do have a
But
question.
they were
for the
very responsive
manufacturers.
to that. They were very responsive in terms of getting that fixed for us.
Yeah. Speaking of Lisa Sigler, she had mentioned that she had signed up between people who are never members of the PCA or people who hadn't gone since 2017, about 209 new accounts. Did you see a lot of accounts that you had not seen at the trade show in the past number of years?
I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm talking to these knuckleheads.
I mean, I could tell you that I had new accounts, you know, which was awesome. And not only did I have new accounts, you know, I also had people that knew of who we were. So what does that tell you? That tells you that, you know, there's more engagement with retailers across media platforms, across social media, you know. So I think that there's definitely something to be said about that. You know, there's that there's progress in that, you know, avenue. So
Let me ask the question in a different way, Mike. I mean, we're having a little bit of a bitch session like we do every year when we do this post stop, right?
Huh?
But in the end, is there any reason why you wouldn't recommend every retailer that they shouldn't come?
no, you
No,
know,
exactly. So I mean,
Yeah.
if someone watches this and they say, "Oh, well, they said this was bad and that was bad and that was bad," yeah, we're picking little scabs here and there because that's what we do.
Yeah.
But the reality is, the overall experience is very good and it's very worthwhile for your business, regardless of which side you
Yeah,
are.
yep.
Media,
And it's gotten better every year.
and
Yeah.
it is getting better. So, I mean, I don't want anyone to take away from this that, oh, that's a waste of my time, because that's furthest from the truth. This
Yeah.
is some of the best time that you can possibly spend is attending our industry trade show. It just
Yeah.
simply is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some of the best conversations were when I could provide opportunities for retailers that are on the uptick, that are fairly new or you know, have been in the industry for a little bit of time, but are just trying to get better. And when, you know, when I have a back and forth with them about, okay, have you tried this, or are you implementing this, or what are the things? And they're like, no, I never did that before. I'm like, okay, you know, so like, all right, so how do we implement that in your shop? You know, what does that look like? How do you get more customer engagement? You know, those are the big benefits again. So, you know, it's a great feeling to help somebody. You know, it's as, you know, I don't know, as much as you want to do that for somebody else, I kind of do it for myself because it makes me feel good. You know, like I'm helping somebody become more successful.
It's
So
because we all learned from somebody before us. I mean, nobody
Yeah.
was born with the answers to all these questions, right?
absolutely.
So, and even if you don't duplicate something or you don't get it gets you thinking about what you do
Right.
in your job, in your
Yeah.
career, in the industry. So I think it's such an important thing for everyone to attend.
Yeah. And now making sure that the retailers have that mindset is really the hardest part, right? So it's like, okay, you can have this dream of becoming a retailer, and then you can have these goals in order to make yourself better. But if you don't have the foresight to really kind of look and understand other people who've been there before, and how do you incorporate some of those things to make it your own, like getting to that step 3 is probably the hardest thing as far as becoming, you know, any part of this industry.
And even if you're a retailer, like you held up your sign that buying doesn't matter,
Yeah.
even if you're that retailer that comes to the trade show and you don't have a budget, okay, maybe you're not going to get time with Cindy to have her walk you through the portfolio for an hour. Okay. But what you will get is you will get the ability to just walk around the trade show and see what are the products that are the most interesting with your own eyes, but also see what other booths are the ones that are more occupied, which ones are the retailers focused on, so you learn a lot seeing what other people are buying, because it kind of success begets success, right?
Sure.
So it's not always about discovering the unvarnished gem and being the first. A lot of times it's just about understanding what is popular and what isn't popular, and seeing what retailers are occupying what booths and who they're spending time with. That can give you a pretty good primer as to this is what maybe I should pay a little bit more attention to, even if you don't actually do a transaction.
Sure.
No,
Absolutely.
I would agree. Like some guys in my area, the guys from Industrial Cigars were there, and they won an award, well earned. And we spent 20 minutes talking one day about, hey, what did you see? What boots did you see? What cigars did you see? And that helped me. And then they asked me the same question. And they just opened up a lounge, and they had a great event up here in Dallas. So yeah, I think that is an invaluable part, is learning from your colleagues. And I always want to know what my colleagues are doing, and you can always learn something that you hadn't thought of from a colleague. And that's another great advantage of the trade show.
All right, I think that's a wrap
That's
for
an
this
important
year.
question, Aaron. You know what I'm really looking forward to?
What's that?
Charbroiled oysters and beignets and muffaladas. Oh my God.
There you go. I'm in for muffaladas.
Lots of fish.
Muffaladas in New Orleans, they're heavenly.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, Ben has promised to make us truly understand New Orleans on this visit. So
Yep. Yeah, we have the inside track.
So see how it goes. All right. I want to thank all you guys for taking the time out. I know it's late and you guys just got back from the trade show, less than a week ago, and it takes all the time and energy to do that. And you guys are trying to catch up and get back to normal. So I appreciate that. Multiple years that we've been doing this. So we really appreciate that and all your insight. That's why we keep inviting you back, because it's so valuable. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Everybody that's watching, thank you very much. We're going to do it again next year. So look out for that. And yeah, thank you all. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.